My name is Alexandra, and I'm a 32-year-old woman trapped in an electric nightmare of my own making. The trouble started, ironically, with something as innocent as childhood friendship. Bella and I grew up together, as close as sisters. Our bond formed in the sandbox and sealed over scraped knees and shared secrets. She was the calm to my storm, the poised figure amidst my chaotic energy. But as we grew, I watched Bella transform, like a butterfly, but into someone I barely recognized. I remember the day it changed. We were 12, sitting in my cluttered bedroom, surrounded by video games and comic books, my world. Bella, twirling a lock of her hair, said, "Alex, do you ever think about being popular? Like being one of those girls everyone admires?" I had laughed it off, but Bella hadn't. As the years rolled on, she morphed into the epitome of teenage allure. Her smile could stop boys mid-sentence, and her laugh became a siren song in the hallways of our high school. She was worshipped, and with that worship, she changed. The sweet girl I knew was replaced by someone who saw friendship as a ladder to climb, each rung a step further away from me. But even as we drifted apart, she never turned her venom on me. She'd saunter into my world, dropping her queenly facade, and ask for my advice on boys, as if we were still those little girls sharing secrets in a treehouse. Despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to hate her. Life took us in different directions after high school. I ventured off to New York for college, embracing the chaos of the city, while Bella stayed back, reigning over our small town like a provincial queen. It wasn't until years later, after I had returned home and started dating Mark, that Bella and I truly collided again. Mark was everything I had ever wanted in a partner, kind, attentive, and with a smile that could light up the darkest of my days. I introduced him to my family with a heart full of hope, not knowing that this would be the beginning of my undoing. It was a chance encounter. Bella, as if summoned by some wicked twist of fate, appeared at my doorstep just as Mark and I were leaving. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, swept over him. "Is this the famous Mark?" she asked, a hint of something sinister in her tone. "Yeah, this is him," I replied, a knot forming in my stomach. Bella's gaze lingered on Mark a moment too long before she flashed a predatory smile. "Well, aren't you going to introduce me properly, Alex?" The unease that had started as a mere flutter in my heart grew into a storm as I watched Bella weave her web around Mark. She was a master at this game, her words honeyed and her laughs perfectly timed. Mark, bless him, was oblivious to the danger. He was just being polite. But to Bella, politeness was an invitation. A few days later, I arranged for the three of us to meet at a cafe, thinking it would put my mind at ease. How wrong I was. As Mark excused himself to the restroom, Bella leaned in, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. "Alex, I have to tell you something. I think I'm falling for Mark." I stared at her, the words not quite making sense. "What are you talking about, Bella?" Her eyes, dark and serious, met mine. "I can't help it. He's just so perfect." It felt like a slap in the face, a betrayal wrapped in velvet. I wanted to scream, to call her out, but the fear of losing Mark silenced me. I forced a smile, a mask to hide the crumbling world inside me. "Stop joking, Bella. That's not funny." She laughed, a sound that's once comfort, now a harbinger of my impending heartache. "Relax, Alex. I'm not going to steal your boyfriend. It's just a little crush." But as I sat there, watching her watch him, I knew it was more than a crush. Bella didn't do things by halves. She was a storm, and she was about to break everything in her path. The cafe was bustling with the usual morning crowd, a cacophony of clinking cups and casual chatter. Mark, Bella, and I found a quiet corner. I could feel the weight of Bella's gaze, heavy and unsettling, as she studied Mark with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "So, Mark, Alex tells me you're a doctor." "That must be fascinating," Bella began, her voice dripping with feigned innocence. Mark, ever the humble, nodded. "It has its moments, but it's just a job at the end of the day." Bella's laugh was a melody designed to ensnare. "Just a job? Saving lives sounds more like a superhero's work to me." I watched, a silent spectator in a play I never wanted to attend. Mark was oblivious to the undercurrents, responding with polite but disinterested answers. But Bella, she was relentless. Each word, each gesture was a calculated move in her game of seduction. As the conversation drifted, I felt an increasing sense of isolation. It was as if I were a ghost at my own table, unseen and unheard. When Mark excused himself, Bella turned to me, her mask slipping slightly. "Alex, aren't you worried?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "Worried about what?" I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Bella leaned in, her voice a venomous whisper. "That someone might take him away from you. Someone like me." The raw honesty in her words struck me. This was no joke or playful banter. This was a declaration of war. "Bella, what has gotten into you?" "He's my boyfriend," I said, my voice tinged with disbelief and hurt. She shrugged, a predator confident in her prowess. "I can't help who I fall for, Alex. And let's be honest, you and Mark, I give it 6 months." I wanted to lash out, to scream at her for her betrayal, but the words died in my throat. Instead, I sat there paralyzed by the realization that the childhood friend I once knew was long gone. Mark returned, oblivious to the tension. As we left the cafe, Bella's parting words were a knife in my back. "Let's do this again soon. I'd love to get to know Mark better." The ride home was a silent one. Mark, unaware of the storm brewing, chatted about mundane things. But my mind was elsewhere, trapped in a whirlpool of betrayal and fear. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. Bella had thrown down the gauntlet, and I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed. She wanted a war, she would get one. But unlike her, I would play the long game. I would wait, watch, and when the time was right, I would strike. Bella may have been the queen of manipulation, but I had a few tricks up my sleeve too. In the quiet darkness of my room, a plan began to take shape. A plan that would bring Bella's world crashing down around her. It was a dangerous path, one that could destroy everything I held dear. But I was past the point of no return. Bella had made this personal, and I was going to make sure she regretted it. The days that followed were a blur of unease and suspicion. Mark, caught up in his work, remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. Bella, on the other hand, seemed to be everywhere, a constant, looming presence in my life. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when my fears were confirmed. Walking down the familiar streets of our town, I saw them, Bella and Mark, strolling together, lost in conversation. They looked comfortable, too comfortable, with each other. My heart pounded against my chest as I approached them, my mind racing. "Mark, Bella," I called out, my voice shaking. They turned, surprise etched on their faces. Mark's expression changed to one of concern as he saw my distress. "Alexandra, what's wrong?" he asked, stepping towards me. "Why are you two together?" The words tumbled out, a mix of accusation and disbelief. Bella's face was a mask of feigned innocence. "Oh, we just bumped into each other. Decided to catch up, you know?" Her casual dismissal of the situation fueled my anger. "Catch up, really, Bella? Or is this one of your little games?" Mark looked between us, confusion turning to realization. "Alex, is this what you think? There's nothing going on." Bella's eyes met mine, a challenge in their depths. "Why, Alexandra? Do you not trust your boyfriend? Or is it me you don't trust?" The confrontation was drawing an audience, curious onlookers pausing to witness the drama. Mark reached out, trying to calm the situation, but I shrugged him off. "Bella, I've known you my whole life. You're like a sister to me. How could you do this?" My voice broke, the weight of years of friendship crumbling under the weight of her betrayal. Bella's response was cold, calculated. "Alex, dear, it's not my fault you can't keep a man interested. Maybe if you were a little less mundane." Those words, sharp and cruel, cut deeper than any physical wound. I looked at Mark, searching for something, anything that would reassure me. But all I saw was a man caught in the crossfire, unsure of his standing. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. "Mark, we're done," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Mark's face crumpled, a mix of hurt and confusion. "Alex, please, let's talk about this." But I was past talking. I turned to Bella, my former friend, now nothing more than a stranger. "And you, Bella, enjoy the victory. I hope it was worth it." With those final words, I walked away, leaving behind the shattered pieces of what I once thought was unbreakable. The pain was raw, a gaping wound in my chest, but it was overshadowed by a burning determination. Bella had taken something precious from me, but she didn't realize the war she had started. I would rebuild, stronger and wiser, and when the time was right, Bella would know the true cost of her actions. The high school reunion was supposed to be a night of nostalgia, a chance to relive the carefree days of youth. Instead, it became a battleground. The moment I entered the decorated gymnasium, I knew I had walked into enemy territory. There she was, Bella, holding court in the center of the room, radiant and confident, basking in the admiration of our former classmates. The sight of her stirred a whirlwind of emotions within me: anger, betrayal, and a burning desire for retribution. I tried to keep a low profile, sticking to the fringes, but fate had other plans. "Hey, Alexandra, over here! Come sit with us!" called out an old classmate, waving enthusiastically. Before I could decline, I was swept up in a tide of people and deposited right next to Bella. Her smile was a masterclass in duplicity. "Alexandra, darling, it's been too long," she cooed, her eyes glinting with unspoken triumph. I forced a smile, keeping my voice even. "Yes, Bella, it's been a while." The evening wore on, a parade of small talk and reminiscing. Bella played the part of the beloved high school idol flawlessly, her every word and gesture seemingly perfect, but I knew better. Beneath that polished exterior was the heart of a viper. As the conversation shifted to life updates, I braced myself. "So, Alexandra, what's new with you? Still with Mark?" Bella asked, her voice honeyed with false concern. The question was a knife, and she wielded it expertly. "No, Bella, Mark and I are no longer together," I replied, keeping my emotions in check. Bella's expression was one of feigned shock. "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. But I'm sure a catch like you won't be single for long." Her words were a charade, a performance for the audience we had. I could feel the eyes of our classmates on us, sensing the undercurrents of tension. "I'm focusing on myself right now, Bella. Relationships aren't a priority," I said, meeting her gaze steadily. Bella laughed, a sound that set my teeth on edge. "Oh, Alex, always the independent one. But you know what they say, the clock is ticking." Her insinuation was clear, a barbed reminder of societal expectations. I felt a flush of anger but held it back. Now was not the time for an outburst. The night dragged on, a torturous affair of forced smiles and polite applause. As I lay in bed later that night, Bella's words echoed in my mind. She had taken pleasure in my pain, reveling in my discomfort. But as I closed my eyes, a plan began to form. Bella thought she had won, but the game was far from over. I would take my time crafting a revenge that would leave no doubt about who the true victor was. Bella had made a grave mistake in underestimating me, and she would soon learn just how costly that mistake was. The confrontation with Bella at my parents' house was unexpected and explosive. She arrived unannounced, her face twisted in a mix of anger and desperation. "What do you want, Bella?" I asked, my voice cool as I opened the door to her furious knocking. "I want my money, Alexandra. The money you owe me," she spat, her eyes blazing. Confusion swept over me. "Money? What are you talking about? I don't owe you anything." "Don't play dumb. The $600,000 you took from Mark. You're going to pay it back." Bella's accusation was ludicrous, yet her conviction was unsettling. "Bella, you've lost your mind. I never took any money from Mark," I countered, struggling to maintain my composure in the face of her absurd claim. Her laugh was bitter, filled with contempt. "Oh, please. You think I don't know about the debts? Mark told me everything. You bled him dry with your extravagant lifestyle, and now I'm paying for it." The pieces clicked into place, a sickening realization dawning on me. Mark's financial troubles, which he had always been so vague about, were now being twisted into a weapon by Bella. "Bella, listen to yourself. You're being played. I never took any money from Mark. This is his doing, not mine." I tried to reason with her, but my words fell on deaf ears. "Save it, Alexandra. I know your type, always playing the victim. Well, not anymore. You're going to pay back every cent, or I'll make sure everyone knows what a fraud you are." Bella's threat was laced with venom, her desperation turning to malice. As she stormed off, I stood there, shaken but resolute. This was no longer just about a broken heart or a tarnished friendship. This was war. Over the next few days, I began to gather information, digging into Mark's financial history. It didn't take long to uncover a trail of deceit and manipulation. He was in deep, and he had dragged Bella down with him. Armed with this knowledge, I arranged a meeting with Bella. We met at a quiet park, away from prying eyes. She arrived, her usual confidence replaced with a wary defensiveness. "Bella, I'm not here to fight. I have something you need to see," I said, extending an envelope towards her. She took it hesitantly, her eyes scanning the documents inside. As the truth dawned on her, her face paled. the realization of Mark's betrayal hitting her like a physical blow. This can't be, she stammered, her facade crumbling. I was never the enemy, Bella. It was Mark all along. He used us both, I said, not without a tinge of sympathy. For a moment there was a flicker of the old Bella, the friend I once knew, but it was quickly snuffed out, replaced by a hardened, bitter shell. This changes nothing between us, Alexandra. You may not have taken the money, but you're still the reason my life is in shambles, she said, her voice cold. As she walked away, I knew that our bridge was burnt, but I also knew that justice, in its own twisted way, had been served. Bella had been humbled, her illusions shattered, and while it brought me no joy, it was a necessary closure. I walked away from the park, a sense of finality washing over me. The chapter of Bella and Mark was closed, but my story was far from over. Life has a way of coming full circle. Standing in my new home, a modest yet cozy place filled with love and laughter, I couldn't help but reflect on the tumultuous journey that had led me here. I had moved on, found love again with someone who valued the simplicity of life as much as I did. We had a beautiful son, whose innocent laughter was a balm to the scars of my past. Yet the echoes of the past still lingered. News of Bella reached me, a bitter reminder of the storm we had weathered. Her fall from grace was as swift as it was severe. After the truth about Mark's deceit and her own misplaced accusations came to light, her life unraveled. The queen bee of our small town had lost her sting, her followers dissipating as quickly as they had gathered. I heard she moved into a small, run-down apartment, a far cry from the lavish lifestyle she once boasted. Her dreams of a grand wedding and a life of luxury with Mark had crumbled to dust, leaving her with a harsh dose of reality. I didn't take pleasure in her downfall. There was no satisfaction in seeing the once mighty Bella reduced to a shadow of her former self. If anything, it was a somber reminder of how fragile our perceptions of happiness can be. "Mommy, look!" My son's voice pulled me from my reverie, his small hands tugging at my skirt. In his hands he held a drawing, a crude depiction of our family. It was us, him, me, and my partner, all smiles and stick figures. "It's beautiful, honey," I said, scooping him into my arms. His laughter filled the room, a sound so pure and full of life. As I put him to bed that night, I realized that this was what true happiness looked like. It wasn't about status, money, or revenge. It was about the simple moments, the ones that often go unnoticed. Lying in bed, I thought about Bella one last time. Our friendship, once a source of comfort and joy, had become a battlefield of envy and betrayal. But it had also taught me valuable lessons about trust, resilience, and the power of letting go. I hoped in time Bella would find her own path to redemption. Perhaps one day she would understand that the ordinary life she once scorned was, in fact, a life filled with extraordinary moments. As I drifted off to sleep, I made a silent wish for her, a wish for peace, for growth, and for the wisdom to see the beauty in life's simplicity. The story of Bella and me was over, but my story, our story, was just beginning.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I work in an office and I'm 35 years old. Right now, my husband Bob and I are staying with his parents because he got transferred. But don't worry, it's just temporary. Bob seems happy to be back in his old home, but I'm really eager to find our own place and move out soon. The thing is, I don't get along with my in-laws very well, especially my mother-in-law. She's always been a bit mean, but now that we're living together, she's even tougher to deal with. Jessica, why haven't you gone shopping yet? You missed the early sale at the supermarket. You're not very good at shopping efficiently, are you? I forgot to mention, I work from home with permission from my company, but I still have to work during the weekdays. So I don't have the chance to go shopping during the supermarket's early bird sale time. Mom, I've told you many times I work during the day, so I can only go shopping after 5 p.m. But every time I say this, my mother-in-law starts criticizing me. Look at her, so full of herself, can't even have a child. Bob and I don't have kids. We haven't gone to the hospital to see if there's a reason why. I really wanted a child, but with Bob's salary, we couldn't afford the expensive treatments to help us have one. Even before we moved in with Bob's parents, my mother-in-law's mean comments bothered me, but it was easier to handle when we lived apart. Now that we're together all the time, I hear her rude remarks nonstop. My father-in-law doesn't say mean things directly, but he bothers me in his own way. He thinks women over 30 are old, and since I'm 35, he treats me like I'm ancient. Hey, old lady, pass me the ashtray. And why are you wearing a skirt? Nobody wants to see your legs. I want to say, if I'm old, what does that make you? About to turn 60. I'm not a pushover, so I always talk back when they say something rude about me. But that just makes our relationship worse, because they think I'm being bossy. The atmosphere in the house is always tense, and I'm starting to feel the strain of living here. But after Bob's transfer, he started working more on weekends and going on more business trips, so we haven't had a chance to talk about moving out. Jessica, I have another business trip this weekend. You just got back from one yourself. Seems like this new branch requires a lot of travel. Before his transfer, Bob had to work late sometimes, but he hardly ever worked on weekends or went on business trips. I get that work changes when you change jobs, but isn't this a bit too much? Because of all this, we haven't been able to find a new place to live, even though we were only supposed to stay with my in-laws temporarily. What if we end up having to stay with them for a long time? That thought really scares me. Then, one day, something unexpected happened. While unpacking Bob's bag after his business trip, I found a piece of paper in his pocket. It turned out to be a printout from a travel website. At first, I thought it was just his flight and hotel details for his trip. But as I looked closer, I couldn't believe what I saw. There was a hotel reservation that included tickets to Disneyland for 2 people, and the date was for the same day Bob said he was on his business trip. Obviously, Bob's work has nothing to do with Disneyland. They deal with seafood, not theme parks. But that's not the point. This meant that Bob wasn't really on a business trip, he was actually spending 2 days at Disneyland. And since the hotel reservation was for 2 people, it was pretty clear he was there with someone else. While I was still processing this shock, I heard Bob humming "It's a Small World After All" in the shower, the famous song from Disneyland. He must have been reminiscing about his trip and humming without realizing. But it seems like fun attractions aren't the only things on his mind during these business trips. I was so furious that I was ready to storm into the bathroom and confront Bob. But just as I was about to, his phone rang. I was too angry to think straight, so I picked up the call without hesitation. Hello. For a brief moment, I heard a woman's voice, and then the call ended abruptly. Could it be? I was convinced that the call was from the woman Bob went to Disneyland with, his mistress. When she heard my voice on Bob's phone, she must have panicked and hung up. I decided to check the call history on his phone. Bob isn't really careful about security, so I guessed his passcode might be his birthday. And just like that, the phone unlocked. But what I found on his phone left me reeling. There was undeniable evidence of his affair all over it. The photo gallery was full of selfies of him and another woman. The dates on the photos matched up with the times Bob said he was on business trips or working late. I couldn't believe how careless he was, leaving behind pictures of their intimate moments. I checked the call history again and saw the name Melissa Smith. So I looked for the same name in his WhatsApp contacts and opened their chat. Bob, I love you. I want to be your wife soon. It seemed like this Melissa was hoping to marry Bob. Maybe she's the one causing trouble in our relationship. While I was thinking about this, Bob came out of the bathroom. Ah, that was refreshing, he said casually, drying his hair with a towel. Facing Bob, who was drying his hair with a towel as if nothing was wrong. I didn't waste any time. Feeling refreshed, huh? Seems like you're refreshed in more ways than one, huh? I confronted him. Who is Melissa Smith? I demanded. Bob flinched at the mention of her name. So it's true. You've been lying about your business trips and spending time alone with this woman, Melissa Smith. Were all those trips and extra work days just lies? It's unforgivable. Why would you? How did you? I pointed my smartphone at Bob, showing him the evidence. All the proof is right here in this phone. And don't talk about privacy invasion when you're the one who's been cheating. It's ironic that a man who's cheating can complain about privacy. If you don't want people to see, set a better password. Before we got married, Bob and I promised each other he wouldn't cheat. I told him if he did, I'd leave him immediately. My feelings haven't changed. I can't stay married to someone who's with another woman. Let's get a divorce. When I mentioned divorce, Bob surprisingly agreed without arguing. Yeah, I guess so. It caught me off guard. I expected more resistance. Was he already prepared for divorce once he got caught cheating? I'll go get the divorce papers tomorrow. You can tell your parents, I told him. Bob's agreement was surprisingly casual, but once the decision was made, there was no turning back, and I had no intention of doing so. Was this the end of our marriage? I felt a pang of sadness. The next day, I left early to pick up the divorce papers from the city office and run some other errands. When I returned home late at night, I found my husband and his parents waiting for me. So you finally decided to come back. We were wondering how long you were going to wander around, my mother-in-law remarked as soon as she saw me. With Bob present, she should already know about his cheating and our decision to divorce. Shouldn't she say something like an apology before making a snide comment? But instead of apologizing, my mother-in-law said something unbelievable. Well, it doesn't matter. At least you're finally leaving. We don't want to see your face anymore, so it's just as well you've been gone all day. What do you mean? I asked, taken aback. With a smug smile, my mother-in-law replied to my question. Exactly as I said. I'm fed up with seeing your face. Now that Bob is back, you were just in the way. You're always talking back and you lack any charm. Even when I tried to make you uncomfortable enough to leave, it took you still long to catch on. I finally had to use my secret weapon. Secret weapon? I repeated, confused. My mother-in-law looked pleased. You already know the name of Bob's girlfriend, right? Yes, something like Smith. Why was she checking if I knew the name of Bob's mistress? You see, I have a friend from my book club, Mrs. Smith. Her daughter is such a well-mannered, charming young lady. She's 10 years younger than you, only 25. At that age, she can have kids easily. Then my mother-in-law dropped a bombshell. So I introduced Mrs. Smith's daughter to Bob. Excuse me? I was shocked. I never expected my mother-in-law to say something like this to me. Are you saying, mother-in-law, you arranged Bob's affair? Oh, arranged sounds so scandalous. I simply introduced them, she replied proudly. I couldn't believe that a mother would encourage her own son to cheat on his wife, and she was so proud to tell me about it. What a terrible mother. Well, I had no other choice. Bob is our only child. We need him here. I would have even accepted you as my daughter-in-law if you'd had children. But all you did was work, never giving us any grandchildren, she continued. Beside her, my father-in-law nodded in agreement, so he was aware of his wife's actions. Do you understand? A 35-year-old woman who can't even have kids is no longer necessary. If you get it, then hurry up and leave, my mother-in-law said triumphantly, pointing at me. After a moment of silence, I replied, I understand your perspective very clearly. I'll leave as you wish. I'll take all my things with me. Oh, please do. I doubt you have much to take with you anyway. Do you need help moving? My mother-in-law laughed. Even though she didn't know it, I would have the last laugh. No, it's fine. Don't worry about me. Everything's already arranged. Huh. My mother-in-law looked surprised since I wasn't crying or upset. Besides, mother-in-law, I'm well aware that you were helping Bob cheat on me. What? Bob asked in a panic. So, what did you expect? That I would let you cheat behind my back and not say anything to the other woman. I made sure to note down her phone number when I checked your phone yesterday, I said calmly. Melissa was quite surprised when I called her and said, I'm Bob's wife. I'd like to meet with you. Apparently, you've been lying to her, claiming that you're single. I set the record straight. Bob, my mother-in-law, and my father-in-law were all stunned. They never expected me to take such decisive action in just one day. Melissa found out that she was the other woman in your affair, and she was really upset. And Mrs. Smith was furious too. Bob, your mother, and you, father-in-law, she even talked about suing both of you for marriage fraud. I couldn't help but feel for her. So I promised to assist her in any way I could. What? Bob was visibly shaken, and my mother-in-law was in the same state. Considering the ordeal Melissa went through, I've chosen not to seek any compensation from her. Instead, I'll increase the amount I'm demanding from you, Bob, and you, mother-in-law and father-in-law. Compensation. Why should we have to pay for anything? My father-in-law blurted out in panic. It's one thing if it's just Bob, but we're not involved. He seemed to expect his son to face consequences for his actions, but they never imagined they'd be held accountable too. You think you can benefit without facing any consequences? That's not how it works, I replied. Actually, you are involved. The emotional distress caused by your behavior is more than enough reason for compensation, don't you think? As I said this with a smile, my father-in-law fell silent. And let's not forget what I do for a living. I work at a law firm. Why don't I consult with my boss, the attorney, and see just how much we can squeeze out of you in compensation? I already told my lawyer at the company about what's going on. Then we heard a car pull up in the driveway. Oh, they're here. Hi, we're from a moving company, I said with a friendly smile as I went to the door. Thanks for coming at such a late time. I'm sorry for asking on short notice. No worries. We had an opening for the night shift. It actually worked out well for me. I got some other stuff done. So let's get started right away. Oh, and be careful, there are some fragile things. As I welcomed them in, a bunch of movers came into the house and started collecting our stuff. Wait, hang on. My mother-in-law interrupted. They started packing up my stuff just like I asked, moving quickly and efficiently. They packed up not just my clothes, books, and computer, but also the things in the living room and kitchen. Hey, wait a minute. Don't take that, it's ours. My mother-in-law complained. No, I brought all of these things here when we moved in. They're mine, I explained calmly. When Bob and I first moved here because of his job, the appliances in the in-laws' house were old and worn out. I couldn't stand it, so I had our appliances sent over from our old apartment. Now it seemed like my mother-in-law had gotten used to the new appliances and thought they were hers. There was a robot vacuum, a cordless cleaner, a fancy oven that could do lots of things, an induction cooktop, a special hairdryer, and an espresso machine. You're taking everything, you greedy woman. My mother-in-law yelled and tried to grab me, but Bob stopped her. Mom, it's all Jessica's stuff. We can't change that, he explained. It looked like Bob understood what was happening, but my mother-in-law wasn't ready to give up. Once you get used to better appliances, it's hard to go back, right? If you're not happy, why don't you just buy new ones? But after paying compensation, it seems unlikely you'll have enough money for fancy appliances. While all this was happening, the movers were quickly loading my things into their truck as I directed them. They nodded to me and climbed into the truck. All right, I'm heading to the new address too. Please make sure everything arrives safely, I told them. As I watched the moving truck drive away, I got into my car. Wait, this car is mine too. Where's that truck going? Bob asked. Huh? Oh, I'm taking it to my old apartment, the one I lived in before we had to move because of your job transfer. It's my apartment. The apartment I bought when I was single was put up for sale by a real estate agent because Bob got transferred for work. But since the price was too high, it never sold, and I still own it. The agent kept suggesting lowering the price, but I'm glad I didn't. I never thought something like this would happen. As I buckled my seatbelt, I chuckled quietly, thinking that maybe, just maybe, I had a feeling deep down that this would happen. What? Bob looked confused, making a puzzled face. I set the selling price higher than the market rate on purpose so it wouldn't sell. That way, I could always go back to my apartment, I explained. Bob seemed to lose his strength upon hearing my words. You're. Feeling confident in my plan and letting my guard down, I suddenly felt a shove from my mother-in-law, who charged at me yelling. I groaned in pain as she tried to throw a cutting board at me for another attack, but then she was tackled by a black object and fell down screaming. Ah, thank you, Blackie, I said, holding the black object, a stray cat named Blackie. I quickly got into the moving truck and rushed to my new place to get away from my mother-in-law. I don't know why Blackie the stray cat was there at that moment, but I'm sure he came to help me because he has a strong sense of justice. I'll give him some catnip as a thank you gift later. After that, Bob and I got divorced. The law firm where I work filed a lawsuit for compensation against Bob and his parents. It's a real blessing that the young lawyers in training at the office took on my case for almost no fee at all. Even though a new young lawyer is handling my case, I feel safe because they have the support of a senior lawyer. As for the lawsuit against Melissa Smith, the senior lawyer himself took it on, not the trainees. He said he will file both criminal and civil lawsuits because of the seriousness of the situation. He mentioned he's excited to file a criminal lawsuit since it's been a while. Even if they sell their house to pay Melissa Smith and me, it probably won't be enough. Thinking about the life of poverty and debt waiting for them, I can't help but smile. I'm alone now, but compared to living with those in-laws and my unfaithful husband, it feels like heaven. For now, I want to enjoy the simple single life with Blackie, the cat I unintentionally brought to my apartment. My name is Julie, and I'm 30 years old. I work for a foreign investment company. My husband James has a job in services, but his contract is not stable because it gets renewed every year. This uncertainty makes us worried, especially towards the end of the year. James' family values government jobs a lot because his parents used to work for the government, and his sister still does. They don't really respect my job in a private company. Since we got married, we've been living with his family, who always make me feel bad about working for foreigners. In investment firms, the main goal is to make money and pay employees. Some people believe that those who work in private companies couldn't get government jobs. And if you work for a foreign company, it's because you couldn't find a job in a local company. James grew up thinking this way because of his family. So even though his job isn't permanent, he sticks to it because it gives him a certain status and salary. Once, I asked James, who was feeling anxious about his job, if it's safer to have a permanent job in a regular company than being a temporary worker in a government job, especially towards the end of the fiscal year. He quickly replied, "If I'm not a civil servant, it's better not to work at all." It seems like my husband hasn't told his parents that he's working as a temporary government employee, so he keeps asking me to keep it a secret. Also, because of his British nature, he boasts about getting promoted. It's a lie I don't understand, but he wants to keep up appearances to his parents and sister. He doesn't show me his salary statement, but only a small amount is deposited into the account. I asked, "This is James, he's a section manager now. His salary must have increased, right? How much is it now?" My husband quickly replied with just 4 words, "You can earn so much these days." I know I earn a good amount, but I'm not sure how it compares to what a section chief civil servant makes. I work as a bond trader, and most of my salary comes from commissions. Lately, I've been making consistent profits, so compared to other employees in regular companies, I earn quite a bit. When my husband mentioned the amount of money, my mother-in-law looked impressed, but she couldn't compare it to what people earned in her time. "But it seems James is doing well," she said proudly. His sister, who works at the city office, overheard our conversation. If he worked at the city office, he might be at the level of a division head. "Government jobs do pay well, don't they?" she commented. Seeing everyone's reactions, my husband looked even more uneasy. He seemed to regret bringing up my salary and swiftly changed the subject. "Let's not talk about salaries anymore. By the way, someone from the housing company visited recently. Are we considering renovations for this house?" He changed the topic. A sales rep from a housing company had indeed paid us a visit. Sensing my husband's train of thought, I decided to go along with the topic of home renovations. As for remodeling the kitchen, we were. But my mother-in-law cut me off abruptly, shouting, "Stay out of family matters. You're just a daughter-in-law. Keep quiet and do as you're told." She glared at me with a scared look. It seems like she's always unhappy with what I say and do. The main reason for her dissatisfaction seems to be that I'm not a government worker. She's particularly bothered by the fact that I manage my husband's salary and give him an allowance. My mother-in-law thinks my husband earns a lot, and she believes I control all of his money. But in reality, most of his salary goes towards his personal expenses, and our living costs are mostly covered by what I earn. As for my sister-in-law, she doesn't contribute anything to our expenses. You're taking money from an elderly couple who only have their pension. James earns a lot, so you're not struggling, right? She says, without any intention of helping out. Living in my husband's family home means we don't have to worry about paying rent, and we can manage with just my salary. But the atmosphere at home is undeniably tense. Unable to join the conversation about the housing company, I hurriedly cleaned up the kitchen after dinner. Neither my mother-in-law nor sister-in-law offered to help with the housework. After finishing my job, I rushed back home to cook, clean, and do laundry without a break. One good thing about working for a foreign company is that I don't have to work overtime as long as I do my job well. Being able to leave work on time is a relief. It helps me keep my work and personal life separate, and I don't have to bring work home, which is a big advantage. On his days off, my husband works on his computer at home. I worry if it's okay for him to bring work home and do it there. When I tried to ask him about it, he said, "I can't work overtime, and if I don't finish on time, I get in trouble." Don't worry about it, it's not your concern. Ironically, I was the one being scolded. Lately, my husband has been in a bad mood, and he gets angry as soon as I try to talk to him. He even yelled at me when I asked about the housing issue. It's none of your business. Didn't Mom tell you that already? Just follow the rules. That's all you need to do. Despite taking care of the household chores and finances in his home, I'm unhappy with my husband's attitude of keeping me in the dark. One day, someone from a home building company came to my in-laws' house with a computer. Everyone except me started discussing floor plans and looked at housing designs on the computer. When I tried to see what they were doing while having tea, she yelled at me, "You don't need to see this. Go away." I was surprised to learn that they were planning to build a new house instead of renovating the current one. My father-in-law had mentioned expanding the house because it was getting cramped. It seems that's what they're actually planning. My in-laws, who retired from their government jobs, have a lump sum of retirement money. I guess they intend to use that money to build a new house. And since I moved in, they've been living on their pension without paying any living expenses, so they should have plenty of money. I decided to distance myself from the situation. What worries me is whether my sister-in-law plans to live in the new house too. She's 28 years old and could get married, but there's been no talk of that, so I assume she'll be living in the new house. I dislike her as much as I do my mother-in-law because she never helps with any chores and is always complaining. I wish she would get married soon, but my father-in-law told the home builder, my daughter and her husband, my son, and us, "Can we add another room? I want a house where all three households can live together." It was surprising to hear that my sister-in-law's husband might also live with us. But what's more surprising is that it's not about my son's family, but just my son. I was shocked that I wasn't included. The house they're planning to build is supposed to be quite big, but even so, the current site won't fit three households comfortably. Since my in-laws and sister-in-law are the ones building the house, I can't say anything, but I think keeping it clean will be a challenge. The man went out to see the model room and the construction site later. "You stay out of this, it's none of your business," my mother-in-law said spitefully. She probably expected me to argue back. She gave me a disapproving look when I didn't. It seems like the housing construction is moving forward. I'm not being told anything, but my in-laws and sister-in-law are getting ready for the move. Seeing my husband not doing anything, I asked, "Aren't you going to help with the move?" "Why should I? Aren't you the one handling it?" My husband got angry when he heard me speaking as if it were someone else's responsibility. I'm confused why he's getting mad when I don't even know when or where we're moving. Later on, whenever I had time, I started preparing for the move, but I packed our belongings separately. I was tired of my mother-in-law's attitude, and I was also feeling suspicious about my husband because of the new house. "When are we moving?" I asked my husband to confirm. "Just get ready, you don't need to know." "That's it," he replied. From conversations during meals, I gathered that the move was probably happening soon, but strangely, they're not telling me anything. Do they see me just as a housemate? I only found out about the move when the movers arrived. As I rushed, we started cleaning up the breakfast dishes. "Leave them. We'll buy new ones." "By the way, do you plan to move into the new house with us?" my mother-in-law asked. In that moment, I realized they were purposely excluding me from discussions of the new house's layout, and keeping me in the dark about the moving day was all part of their plan to kick me out of my in-laws' house. My husband, standing behind my mother-in-law and laughing, didn't say anything. He probably agrees with them. I had packed my things separately from my husband because I had a feeling this would happen. Now I'm being faced with hatred. From now on, only the family will live here. "Do as you wish," my mother-in-law said, looking displeased. My sister-in-law, looking worried, probably thought I begged to come with them while crying. Not happy with my reaction, my mother-in-law snapped, "Anyone who relies on someone else's earnings should leave now. James will build the new house and pay off the loan with his salary. We don't need a freeloader," she yelled angrily. I was actually the one planning to leave. When I heard about the mortgage repayment coming from my husband's salary, I had to hold back my laughter. It seemed my husband hadn't been informed by his mother about this plan. He looked surprised but realized he couldn't contradict his angry mother, so he just remained silent. It seemed his parents believed they wouldn't need to use their retirement money, and instead their son would pay off the loan and build a new house. I found it intriguing how they planned to handle the loan repayment, so I informed them with a smile, "Got it. I've decided to proceed with divorcing James." So I told them, "You all go ahead and move to the new house." My mother-in-law didn't like my reaction and started shouting, but my father-in-law and sister-in-law pulled her away, and they left the house. To my husband, who stayed behind, I said, "We'll bring the divorce papers later, so please give me your new address. I'm sure it's a splendid house. Since I haven't been informed at all, I'd like to see it." Reluctantly, my husband gave me the address. Since I didn't have many belongings, a friend helped me move them. Then, I changed all the public utility bills for my in-laws' house to my husband's name. I went back to my parents' house for the time being, and once I was settled, I went to the address my husband gave me to get his signature on the divorce papers. The new house where my husband and his family moved was indeed impressive. It was a grand 3-family home. As soon as my mother-in-law spotted me, she hurried over and yelled, "What are you doing here?" Ignoring her outburst, I asked my husband to sign the divorce papers. My mother-in-law then turned to him and said, "Useless wife. It's because she's not a government worker. Hurry up and say it." With a sarcastic tone, I turned to my mother-in-law and remarked, "What a splendid house. Are you sure you can afford it with James' salary?" My mother-in-law's face turned red with anger. "You're the outsider now, so don't concern yourself with us. Take the divorce papers and leave," she snapped. I wanted to savor the sight of my husband's pale face a little longer, but I grabbed the divorce papers and left immediately, keeping an eye on my furious mother-in-law. I went straight to the town hall to submit the papers and decided to start looking for a new place for myself. Feeling worn out from married life after that ordeal, I opted to live alone in a small apartment for a while. I found a property near my workplace that suited my needs, so I moved in right away and started afresh. Life became so much more comfortable without roommates boasting about being government workers or leaving all the chores to me. Just as I was starting to put my husband out of my mind, I suddenly received a call from an unfamiliar number. "I can't pay the loan, Julie. Will you come back to me?" "I'm calling from a friend's phone. I can't afford to pay the mortgage, electricity, water bills, or even my phone bill," my ex-husband said, his voice breaking with tears. I assumed he could ask his family for help, so I suggested, "Your sister has a stable job, and your parents are retired with pensions. They should have some savings, right?" When I dismissed his plea, my husband reluctantly confessed, "Actually, they don't have any savings left. My sister has debts and no extra money." Listening to my husband, it became clear that their retirement savings were nearly wiped out due to investment fraud, and his sister, who lived with their parents, had racked up significant debt by overspending on credit. This proud family of civil servants had nothing to hide. While I was living with them, they might have been able to keep it under wraps. But now that they've moved to a new house, they seem to be struggling to manage their lives and reach out to me out of desperation. However, I had no intention of reuniting with them. I declined their plea and ended the call. After that, the phone rang numerous times, but I continued to ignore it until the calls eventually ceased. Later, when I visited their new house, I noticed a for sale sign. There happened to be someone from the housing company there, so I couldn't resist asking about the in-law family. It turns out they sold the house immediately after it was built, but they still had a remaining loan. The housing company representative also mentioned, "I was surprised by that family. Despite their boasting, they said they would sell right away if they couldn't repay the loan because our relative was a cosigner. It seems to have caused some trouble. It seems that because a relative cosigned their loan, that relative had to take on the debt. Once this became known, considering their past boasting about being civil servants, it appears they're now facing ostracism from their relatives. It's not surprising, really. They caused trouble for a relative who works in a private company by involving them as a cosigner." As I relaxed on my sofa at home, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of imagining what my ex-husband and his family, who no longer had anyone to boast to about being civil servants and were now seen as a nuisance by their relatives, might be going through. "Hey, this soup for breakfast doesn't taste great. It's too watery. Why is it like this?" "Yeah, it's not that good. Can you make it thicker? But remember, I need to be careful with salt, as the doctor said." "Who cares about that? I really like strong flavors. The one who always complains about food is my mother-in-law, Mill. She always wants food with lots of seasoning, but she's overweight and has almost diabetes. Her doctor warned her, but she doesn't seem to care and adds extra seasoning to everything I cook. I was shocked by how much salt and pepper she added to the soup I'd made carefully. Even though I use salt and seasonings with less salt, it seems like it's never enough for her. I worry she might get really sick if she keeps eating like this." Honestly, I wouldn't be too upset if something happened to her. Mill seems to enjoy making things difficult for me. She's always complaining and being mean. My name's Alice, I'm 29 years old, and I work while also taking care of the house. I've been married for 3 years, but we don't have any kids. The problem is that I can't have children, and Mill never lets me forget it. You're worthless as a woman if you can't have children. You're broken, she'd say. You should be thankful just to be allowed in this house. You're right, I am broken because we've tried so many times and I can't have kids. Talk about getting a bad deal. Ha, how can you say that? My husband laughed. Well, because a woman who can't have kids is done for, Mill added. You're right, Mom, my husband agreed. That I'm broken. I really want a baby. I've been going to the doctor while working, trying everything, but nothing's working. It's exhausting both physically and emotionally. So I've decided to stop the treatment. It's also expensive, and it's hard to keep going for years. My husband used to say spending money on fertility treatments was pointless. But he also pushed me to get pregnant quickly. Why bother pressuring me? I can't get pregnant just because you want me to, I thought to myself. After giving up on treatments, I thought about being happy with just my husband and me. But my mother-in-law still hoped for a grandchild to tease me about. She even bought diapers and proudly showed them off. Look, I got diapers, she said excitedly. You'll need them one day. Haha, aren't those a bit small for you, Mel? I joked back. Haha, hey, these are for a baby, can't you see that? She replied. Well, I wouldn't know. I'm the broken woman who can't have kids, I retorted sarcastically. That's enough. Angrily, my mother-in-law stormed off to her room. Thank goodness, I thought, already tired from work and not wanting to deal with her mean comments anymore. It seems that she has nothing better to do than make my life miserable. We moved in with my in-laws after my father-in-law passed away a year ago. My mother-in-law was heartbroken. Then, around the same time, she was warned by her doctor about her risk of diabetes. That's why we moved in. My husband wanted to support his mom, but despite having diabetes, she's okay as long as she takes her medication and eats well. There's nothing to worry about, well, except that she often forgets her meds and eats whatever she wants, so her condition might worsen eventually. Even if that happens, I really don't want to be responsible for taking care of my mother-in-law. I'm still working and really busy. Taking care of in-laws in my 20s? No thanks. The next day was my day off, so I was doing chores around the house. My mother-in-law, who usually just sits on the sofa snacking, suddenly got up and went into my room. I didn't want her in there, but my hands were full, so I didn't say anything. I cleaned your room for you, she said. Thanks, I replied, feeling suspicious. Maybe I should switch rooms with my husband. You know, if you leave your room messy, you'll attract bugs, she chuckled. Sure, enjoy your clean room, I replied, feeling unsure about her intentions. My mother-in-law seemed to think I was grateful, which only made her behavior more suspicious. I had a feeling she was up to something. That night, I decided to sleep in my husband's room. He'd been away on business since yesterday, so he wouldn't know. Even if he finds out, I knew he wouldn't be upset. So I made my choice. I work as a nurse with regular hours, so we have separate bedrooms. Part of it is because our relationship has cooled off. But mostly it's because I don't want to disturb him when I work night shifts. I waited until my mother-in-law went to her room, then I went to my husband's room. Okay, she's in her room, time for me to get some sleep too, I thought. And so, I ended up sleeping in my husband's room for 2 days. My mother-in-law started to get suspicious because I seemed too happy. She began asking strange questions. Are you sure you're not feeling any discomfort or anything? She asked. What do you mean? I replied, avoiding her gaze. Oh, never mind, she said, dropping the subject. Was there something she was wondering about? Avoiding eye contact, my mother-in-law ate her meal alone. I had the night shift that day, so I planned to relax at home before heading to work. But relaxing isn't really an option for me since my mother-in-law never helps around the house. She enjoys telling me what to do while she sits on the couch, eating snacks and reading Japanese comics for women. She's probably reading and plotting her next move to make her annoying daughter-in-law upset. I glanced at the cover of her comic. It was titled Epic Mother and Daughter-in-Law Swamp Battle in English. I couldn't help but roll my eyes at her choice of reading material. Eventually, my husband returned from his business trip, but it was already 10 p.m. GH. I'm exhausted. I'm going to take a bath, he said. Sure, I'll heat it up for you. Have a beer while you wait, I suggested. Thanks, I will. Oh wait, it's not safe to drink alcohol before taking a bath. Okay, I'll have a non-alcoholic beer then, he reluctantly agreed, listening to my advice about the dangers of mixing alcohol and hot water. You'd think he'd know better. Even saunas have signs warning against entering if you're drunk. But no, common sense isn't so common for him or my mother-in-law. After that, my husband took his bath and started singing loudly. We live in a single-family home, but singing at this hour, our neighbors won't be pleased. La 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 la. Hey, you're too loud, I said. Shut it. You're the one being loud, he retorted. I quietly warned him to stop singing, but then my mother-in-law came into the bathroom area to join in. Joaquin is just trying to enjoy himself singing. What's wrong with that? She said. What? You really don't know how to treat your husband, do you? Always so inconsiderate and complaining, my mother-in-law scolded me. Hey, I'm not the one always complaining, Mill, I replied. Talking back, huh? You're definitely not cute. Not that you're a beauty to begin with, she sneered. That's okay with me. I probably look like a knockout beauty in some other country, no worries, haha. After that, my husband got out of the bath and started drinking. It was already 10:30 p.m., and I needed to leave for the hospital where I work. Even though it's close by, there's a lot to do, so I have to leave early. Oh, by the way, I've been sleeping in your room. Would you mind sleeping in mine tonight? My clothes are all over, I mentioned to my husband. Sorry, sure. Doesn't matter to me, he replied. Okay, I'm heading out then. Take care, I whispered to my husband so Mill wouldn't hear. Just as I was about to grab my bag and leave, I heard my husband let out a loud groan. What? Joaquin. He was curled up on the floor, holding onto his leg and moaning. He looked like he was in a lot of pain. Mill's face turned pale, and she started to panic. What's happening? Speak, she demanded. He couldn't say a word, no matter what I asked. There was no response. I felt like I needed to do something, but then I noticed something strange. The floor was unusually slippery. Even though I was wearing socks, it felt like I could easily fall. What on earth is this? I exclaimed. Joaquin, Mill, what did you do? I didn't do anything. It's not my fault, Mill protested. Blaming my mother-in-law wouldn't solve anything at that moment, so I immediately called an ambulance. My husband was taken straight to our hospital, and work was the last thing on my mind. Even after we arrived, he kept clutching his leg, visibly sweating in pain. It hurts so bad, Joaquin. Hang in there, please, I pleaded. Thankfully, a doctor was able to examine him, and he seemed a bit relieved. His leg was indeed broken, just as we suspected. It was a 5th metatarsal fracture, which made sense given how he slipped on that slick floor. His foot was visibly swollen. Usually, people get this kind of fracture by tripping or putting too much weight on it. Speaking from my own experience, I twisted my ankle falling downstairs years ago. I heard a loud snap, and the pain was unbearable. I was also diagnosed with a 5th metatarsal fracture. I was lost in music while walking downstairs, so it was quite embarrassing. I even lied to my close friends about it. Since his fracture didn't need hospitalization, my husband could come home. I was supposed to work a night shift, but my nursing supervisor insisted that I take the night off. It wasn't life-threatening, but I guess she was genuinely worried. I survived, but now I've got a fever, my husband remarked. Well, you broke your leg, so getting a fever isn't surprising. But why was the floor so slippery? Maybe we should ask Mill about that, huh? I suggested. Hey, what did you do to the floor in the room? I confronted Mill. Well, the floor was slippery. That's why I slipped and fell. I could have seriously hurt myself, my husband interjected. That room is for my daughter-in-law, so I greased the floor. What? I was hoping she would slip, so I put a lot of grease on the floor. I never expected you to go in there and slip, Mill confessed. Unbelievable, I exclaimed. It turns out my mother-in-law intentionally greased the floor to make me fall. She had claimed to have cleaned the room, but her actual intention was to harm me. I'm furious. If I had entered that room, I could have been seriously injured. Breaking a leg would be the least of my worries. Hitting my head could have been fatal. My mother-in-law's actions are practically criminal. You're despicable. You're not even family to me anymore. I got seriously hurt because of you. I'm going to the police, I declared. Wait a minute. I didn't directly cause any harm, did I? Your wife is the one to blame. She told you to enter her room, didn't she? So this is all her fault, Mel retorted. Shut up. That's not the point. You're getting arrested. My husband furiously dialed the police. My mother-in-law tried to snatch the phone away but couldn't overpower him, even with a broken leg. My husband was desperately holding onto his phone, talking to the police. I couldn't help but wish I was at work, or even at the hospital, instead of dealing with this mess. Neighbors will eventually hear about this horrifying situation. Since she almost injured me too, maybe I should also involve the police. We don't know for sure, but she might be charged with attempted harm. Wait now. I don't want to go to the police, Mel protested. Really? You knew the risks when you did this, or did you think you could just make me disappear from this world? I snapped. Well, I did think it would be better if you just disappeared. Wow, you're the worst. Your mindset is criminal. Personally, I wish you'd just stay in jail forever, Mel sneered. Let's get a divorce, I declared. What? I can't keep living like this. If I stay in this house, I might actually be in danger one day. I'm too scared to live with that. Plus, I can't tolerate your lack of morals anymore, I explained. Wait, please don't say we'll divorce over this, my husband pleaded. Over this, you belittled me, called me defective. Do you even realize how much that hurts? I can manage without you just fine, I stated firmly. No, I need you. I was depending on your income. I even signed a new car contract. I finally got the Toyota Century I've always wanted from Japan. My husband protested. I don't care anymore, I said, feeling determined. I managed to clean the slimy floor and quickly packed my belongings into a bag. I stuffed more into my carry-on, took off my wedding ring, and placed it on the table. While searching through a shelf full of dishes, I thought about bringing the divorce papers. Found it. The divorce papers you wrote before. Remember how you wrote that if I can't have a child within 2 years, we divorce? Thanks. I can't have children now, so let's divorce, I declared, holding the papers in my hand. You must feel relieved now, I added. Wait, what about the loan for my Century? My husband asked. Who cares? I replied dismissively. I left the house and went straight to the hospital. The compassionate charge nurse didn't ask many questions when I showed up. She seemed to understand I had my reasons. Being a nurse, I can support myself without relying on a husband. I wondered why I endured being treated poorly by my in-laws, enduring their mean comments. The whole situation felt ridiculous, so I decided to focus solely on my job and stop dwelling on it. The next morning, I filed for divorce, and he's now my ex-husband. Given the emotional pain he caused me, I consulted a lawyer about getting compensation. In the end, my ex-husband had to pay me, and I couldn't help but think serves you right. Since the police got involved, it seems the neighbors have been avoiding my mother-in-law because she blabbed about why my ex-husband broke his bone. Everyone thinks she's a terrible parent, which is understandable. My ex-husband no longer wants anything to do with her and seems to have kicked her out. Though there is some kind of survivor's benefit program, it doesn't pay much. She's been crying that living alone is impossible. She loves to eat, and because of her, our grocery bills were outrageous, so living on just the survivor's benefit would mean a very modest lifestyle. As for my ex-husband, I don't care what happens to him anymore. He mentioned something about taking out a car loan, but I have no idea what happened with that. I assumed he wouldn't be able to afford it on his salary. He took me for granted and thought I would contribute money too, which annoyed me so much. Even though he's not particularly wealthy, he's the type to buy a new car without thinking. Later, I started dating a doctor at the hospital, and 2 years after that, we got married and were blessed with a child, which felt like a miracle after all I'd been through. From now on, I'm committed to doing my best for my family. I got a call from my self-centered sister-in-law out of the blue. She told me she left her baby at our doorstep and asked me to take care of it for a week. But there was a big problem. I had moved out of that house just the day before. When I told her this, she started yelling at me, saying she was overseas and demanding that I find the baby immediately. I panicked and drove back to the old house. But there was no baby to be found. I realized I needed to call the police. As I dialed the number with shaky hands, I remembered something truly shocking. I've been married to Scott for 10 years, but we never had children. I'm 38 now, and my younger sister-in-law, Lindsay, who's 5 years younger, often takes advantage of me. Her husband is a big shot and mine works for him, so Lindsay always asks me to do things for her. It's usually just a quick drive away. But ever since she got pregnant, she's been making more demands, even making me clean and cook for her. I love helping people, but I've been telling my husband that Lindsay is being too selfish. He keeps asking me to help her out a bit longer, promising he'll talk to her husband about it. But it seems like he's influenced by Lindsay's husband too. So reluctantly, I keep going to Lindsay's whenever she calls. Oh, my stomach feels so heavy. Michelle, can you grab the TV remote for me? Huh? What? Even though she was only 3.5 months pregnant, her belly looked bigger than expected. But she was naturally a bit plump, so I didn't say anything. Maybe it'd be good for your health to move around a bit, I suggested. Don't tell me what to do when you've never been pregnant, she snapped back. Taking care of this baby is important for our future. What's wrong with that? She lounged on the couch, keeping her arrogant attitude, which started getting on my nerves. But when I questioned if you could know the baby's gender at 3.5 months, she got angry. You're so old-fashioned. Nowadays, you can find out the gender early, Lindsay insisted, and I didn't feel like arguing, so I just listened to her complaints. You're just jealous because you can't have a baby. It's not good for the baby's development. If anything happens, it's your fault. She started using the unborn baby to threaten me, making it hard to be around her. I quickly finished my tasks and leave feeling suffocated by Lindsay's behavior. When I talked to my husband after work, he comforted me, saying just hang in there a little longer. But despite his words, I still felt uneasy. It was hard to keep feeling this way. I started making excuses whenever Lindsay called, avoiding her requests. But then she complained to my husband, saying I was being mean to her, which left me feeling lost. Even when I said I was busy, she ignored it and kept calling. Eventually, I had to pick up, and she screamed at me, threatening my brother's job at the company, reminding me that her husband was the president. My husband, always gentle and trying to avoid trouble, urged me to go to Lindsay's place. Time went by, and Lindsay gave birth to a boy a month early. The baby weighed over 140, which seemed big for a premature birth. But not knowing much about pregnancy, I accepted it. Lindsay named him Chris, and after she left the hospital, she called me to take care of him, saying it would be good practice for when I had my home. Despite my annoyance with Lindsay, I visited her every time she called, thinking she must be struggling after giving birth. Plus, Chris was just too cute. Chris, you're such a good boy. Grow up healthy. Changing diapers and bathing him didn't feel like a chore when I saw his face. But after 3 months, Lindsay started leaving Chris at my house more often. What's going on? You're all dressed up, I asked. I have a dinner with people from my husband's work. You take care of Chris while I'm out, she said, as she regained her strength. I realized how busy the wife of a president could be, and I took care of the baby diligently, but Lindsay started leaving Chris with me more often. Thanks for today. Isn't this too much? Are you just accompanying your husband? My husband is handling an important deal, and I'm helping out. You should too, Lindsay said, forcing Chris onto me and rushing out. I couldn't help but wonder if she was really helping with that flimsy dress she was wearing. Despite my doubts, I couldn't ignore the baby, so I took care of him as usual. But that day was different. When I changed his diaper, Chris had diarrhea. He seemed energetic and didn't have a fever, so I made sure to keep the room warm. In the evening, when Lindsay came to pick up Chris, I told her about it. She accused me loudly, saying I did something to Chris out of spite. I denied it, just as my husband Scott came home. What's all this noise in the entryway, Scott? I trusted your wife with Chris, and now he has diarrhea, Lindsay said, her usually harsh tone turning meek as she started crying. I understand your concern, but Michelle doesn't have much experience with babies. It might have just been a bit cold today. I'll apologize on her behalf, so please forgive her, my husband defended me. I felt puzzled why I had to apologize when I hadn't done anything wrong. I saw Lindsay and Chris off, feeling frustrated. While making dinner in a low mood, my husband suddenly got serious and took out an envelope from his bag. Michelle, we need to talk about something important. Dinner can wait. Please sit down, he said, spreading out documents on the table. The words he told me were shocking, something I never imagined. But seeing his determination, I nodded quietly. A week later, while I was unpacking boxes, Lindsay called. I left a bag at your entrance. Take care of him for a week. What? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. It's my baby, of course. You've already brought him inside, haven't you? After hearing the whole story, it turned out that since I wasn't home, she had put Chris in a bag and hung it on the doorknob. Hearing this, I panicked. Wait a minute. We moved out yesterday. We're not going back to that house. Please go and pick up Chris right away. But Lindsay didn't believe me, saying, "What?" Lying again. When I insisted it was true, she suddenly panicked. It turns out she left Chris 5 hours ago. Plus, I was shocked to learn she was currently on an overseas trip. Despite it being spring, it was still chilly outside. Go pick up Chris now. Hurry up. More worried about the baby than angry at Lindsay, I immediately drove off. An hour later, I arrived at our old house and checked the entrance, but there was no sign of Chris. I checked the garden thoroughly and asked the neighbors, but no one saw anything, I said, feeling frustrated. I thought no crying or injuries either. What's happening? Feeling hopeless without any clues, I was about to call the police when my phone rang. What? What did you say? The call was so shocking that I couldn't even speak. After hanging up, I was so stunned that I just wandered around until Lindsay called. He was in the eco bag at the entrance, right? He's not there. I can't find him anywhere. This is bad. If we don't find Chris, my husband might divorce me. It'll be your fault if we don't find him, Lindsay said, her voice trembling with panic over the phone. Since there was nothing else to do, I told her I would report to the police and ask for help. But she adamantly refused. Doing that will make it a big deal, and my husband will find out. Chris' safety is more important than your reputation. Chris is just a tool to extract money from my husband, Lindsay said, revealing her selfishness, unconcerned about me. I could hear Lindsay talking with someone else. Later she said, "This trip is ruined. I couldn't get a flight today, but I'm coming back tomorrow. Don't tell my husband anything. If you find Chris, contact me immediately. I'll do what I can." After I agreed, Lindsay hung up. The next day at the airport, Lindsay arrived with a man, looking displeased. "Michelle, what are you doing here? Did you find Chris? I came to tell you something important. Chris has gone somewhere you can't reach. It's too late," Lindsay said, panicking as I looked sad. "You're lying. What am I supposed to tell my husband, you useless thing? Find a baby that looks like him right now. How can you say that? Are you even a mother?" Lindsay suggested finding a baby of the same age to deceive her husband. Overwhelmed with anger and sadness, tears started to flow. But I wiped them away and met her gaze firmly. "Instead of looking for a similar child, talk to this person," I said, as a woman hiding behind me, her face covered by a deep hood, revealed herself. Both Lindsay and the man with her started trembling. Yes, this woman was the wife of Lindsay's affair partner. The man was too shocked to move as his wife confronted him, yelling, "You scum, I'll knock some sense into you." He pleaded pathetically, "Please forgive me." But his wife was unforgiving, telling him bite down hard, and then slapped him repeatedly. The force was so strong that passersby stopped to watch. After leaving the man collapse and clutching his cheek, she turned to face Lindsay. Lindsay quickly begged and started talking fast. "Listen, don't get it wrong. We're not in that kind of relationship." "What? Hey, Michelle, stop recording with your smartphone," Lindsay snapped, seeing me recording the scene. But I remained calm. "Then how do you explain this?" I pulled out an envelope containing emails between Lindsay and her affair partner, along with cozy photos of them from social media. Lindsay tried to grab them from me, glaring menacingly. "Snooping like that is despicable. How did you find his wife's contact information?" "I actually met his wife by chance," I said. When I saw Lindsay's affair partner on social media, his face seemed familiar. After thinking, I realized he was the husband of the woman who works at my regular hair salon. He too was a hairstylist, but unlike his successful wife, who owned several shops and was skilled, he was known for not working and just playing around. He was a typical husband living off his wife's success. When I told his wife about Lindsay's affair trip, she said, "I've reached my limit. I'm joining in." She came with me, and I was honestly surprised at how terrifying she could be when angry, considering she's usually gentle and kind. The playboy hairstylist couldn't stand up to his wife and kept begging, "Please don't divorce me." Watching her steadfast refusal, I felt determined. Plus, I started to wonder if Chris was born from the affair. "What? Don't make things up without proof," Lindsay said. But he was born a month early and weighed over 140 grams. That's definitely too big. Have you been fudging the weeks? I pulled out another envelope and showed her the documents inside. One was a maternal and child health handbook. Another proved that Lindsay's husband wasn't Chris' biological father. You played dirty, but tearing this up won't erase what happened. Lindsay snatched the DNA test results from my hand and tore them up, looking pleased. But that wasn't going to let her off the hook. You better talk directly to the person who gave me these documents, I said, showing Lindsay my smartphone. Her eyes widened, and she looked like she was about to scream. No wonder, the screen showed Lindsay's husband. I wasn't recording. I was on a video call with Lindsay's husband. Lindsay, you lied about going to your parents' house and deceived me, he said. Lindsay stammered, not making much sense in response. Standing in front of her, I began to speak slowly. Listen carefully. I'm going to explain everything step by step. A week ago, her husband, suspecting something, had requested a DNA test between himself and Chris. He also lied about going on a business trip for a week to monitor her actions. Lindsay, unaware of this, immediately contacted her lover by email and booked an overseas trip in a rush. She didn't even think to erase her browsing history on the day of the trip. After leaving Chris in an echo bag at the entrance of the house I was living in, Lindsay went off to the station humming a tune. Your husband followed her and took care of Chris. If he had been left at the entrance for over 5 hours, who knows what could have happened. What? So Chris is alive? Lindsay's husband exclaimed. Yes, he's with me now. The call I was about to make to the police when I couldn't find Chris was from Lindsay's husband. Surprised but eager to understand the situation fully, I immediately went to his house. Chris was full of energy, playing with a rattle. While hearing about the past events, I remembered that despite being born a month early, he weighed over 140 ounces. At the time, I reluctantly accepted it, but I indeed thought it was strange. With Lindsay's husband's permission, I searched through Lindsay's belongings and found her maternal and child health handbook. Looking at its contents, I discovered that Lindsay had falsified the baby's weeks. Why did Lindsay do such a thing? Looking back at the actual timing of her pregnancy, it was exactly when her husband was away on a long business trip for about 2 months. Therefore, it was impossible for him to be the father of the baby. Realizing that she was pregnant with her lover's child, Lindsay thought she could deceive everyone by fudging the birth month, especially since the baby turned out to be unexpectedly big. That's when I became suspicious. The person who was in love, and now everyone knows about the child, started saying sorry a lot to their wife. But their wife said coldly, "You'll have to manage on your own now," and gave them divorce papers. Then she kicked her crying husband and left. She walked away with confidence. Meanwhile, Lindsay's husband didn't stay quiet. He said, "I'm divorcing you, obviously. Go be with that other man." "No, I just thought he looked nice. He doesn't have any money. You were only with me for the money, right?" Lindsay got emotional as she admitted the truth. "You said Chris was just a way to get money from your husband." "Don't talk nonsense. I heard about your phone call yesterday from Michelle. I had recorded everything to make sure Lindsay couldn't deny it later." Lindsay's husband had been quietly listening until then, his face red with anger. When Lindsay was confronted with the truth, she seemed a bit scared at first. Then she looked at her phone and said, "If Chris is fine, then everything's okay, right? And even though he's not your biological child, I gave birth to him, so he's like your child." Both Lindsay's husband and I were shocked by her selfish reasoning. Thinking she had cleverly avoided the issue, Lindsay looked proud. But then her husband said, "It's over," and hung up the phone suddenly. Lindsay tried to call him back, but he had blocked her. Then I reminded her that leaving Chris alone in a bag and going out was against the law. She shook her head in disbelief. I showed her the law on my phone, and she suddenly got scared and collapsed. "Lindsay, it's over between us. Goodbye." Giving Lindsay a cold glance, I walked away, feeling a shiver down my spine. When I looked back, I saw Lindsay's eyes were red, and she had a scary expression on her face. "I'll tell Scott you're to blame for all of this because you moved without telling me. My husband decided to move because he felt sorry for me being used by you. He knows everything about what happened, and he never wants to see you again." Lindsay thought her brother would support her, but when she realized he had left her too, she screamed loudly. It's shocking how selfish someone can be, not once considering Chris. "Stop crying and go get Chris right now." If I'm getting divorced, I don't mean the baby. What kind of person are you? I won't forget what you said. Chris will never go back to you, no matter what. After cutting ties with my sister-in-law for good, I walked away with a strong determination. Later, I reported Lindsay's cruel act of abandoning the baby to the police. Although Chris was quickly kept safe, what Lindsay did was considered too heartless, and she faced serious consequences from the police. Lindsay ended up getting divorced by her husband and rejected by her own family, leaving her completely alone. She was sued by her ex-husband for leaving the baby and deceiving him, and he demanded $30,000 in compensation. Lindsay and her lover had to borrow money to pay the settlement, and because they'd borrowed from a sketchy company, Lindsay had to work in a shady place to pay off the debt. My determination was to raise Chris as my own child. When I shared this with my husband, he happily agreed. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, I'm also expecting a new baby. I'll take care of these children with love and make sure they have a happy and free life. Steve said confidently, I built that house, so it belongs to me. Now you have to leave even though we're splitting up. I don't think you can manage on your part-time pay. Steve chuckled as he showed her the divorce papers. My name's Katie. I'm 33 years old. Recently, I got a job working part-time at a nearby supermarket. I married Steve 3 years ago after we met at work and both quit at the same time. I wanted to keep working after we got married, but he wanted me to stay home. So I became a full-time housewife, even though I really miss working. But I kept feeling like I wanted to work outside the house more and more. After a lot of talking, I finally got a part-time job. We want kids, but we haven't been able to have any yet. I really wanted a cat as a pet, but Steve really doesn't like them, so I sadly had to give up on the idea. Steve used to want me to stay home all the time, but he got mad when I started working part-time and started complaining about everything I did. You went to work again today, huh? Lately, it seems like the house is getting messier. Are the clothes all wrinkled in the laundry? You're not keeping up with the housework, Steve criticized. That wasn't true. I had finished cleaning before going to work, and the laundry was perfectly done. What are you talking about? I'm doing everything just like before. It's obviously clean, can't you see? I argued. He's complaining about the food again. Fried chicken, really? Can't you cook something different? He complained. I didn't make fried chicken that often, and I tried to make different meals every day despite having limited time. I put effort into making your favorite fried chicken, and I make a variety of dishes. I defended myself. But whenever I tried to speak up, he got even angrier. Are you saying you're too busy because of your part-time job? You're just pretending to be busy. Don't act like your job is important when it barely pays anything, he scolded. You're only working because you're selfish. Your earnings were fine to begin with. Make sure you do the housework properly. Don't make excuses about not having time. It's embarrassing to work so hard for such a low wage. Steve always insulted my job with hurtful words. He used to say he wanted me to be a housewife so people wouldn't think we were struggling financially. But he constantly belittled my part-time job, bragging about how he made enough money that we didn't need to worry about expenses. Being constantly insulted for my work with such cruel words was unbearable. Every day, his words made me furious. One day, we decided to go visit Steve's parents' house, where we hadn't been in a while. Even though I had been annoyed with Steve for a long time, I was glad to get out of the house for a change. I didn't know what would happen when we got to his parents' house. After driving for a few hours, we got to Steve's parents' house. His mom, who lived alone, welcomed us with a smile. After dinner, which she cooked, Steve went out to play slot machines. While washing dishes with my mother-in-law, her mood changed. She wasn't as calm as before, and her face looked serious. As I made coffee, wondering what was wrong, we sat on the sofa, and she started talking. Katie, according to Steve, you're working part-time. Why do you need to work when he has a good job? Also, he says you're not keeping up with the housework because you're too busy with your job, she said. I was taken aback by her sudden words. No, that's not true. I'm handling everything just fine, I responded. My mother-in-law acted surprised, saying, Oh, I've heard from Steve about how bad you are at housework. There's no point in lying. He's been dealing with this alone. He's exhausted from work, and it's sad that he has to come home to a messy house. You're not cooking proper meals, are you? Quit that part-time job. Your workplace won't miss you. They can find someone else. Your job is to take care of the house, okay? Focus on the house and support Steve properly from now on. Don't embarrass yourself as Steve's wife. My mother-in-law has traditional beliefs, thinking a wife should stay home. She got married right after school and never worked, always being a full-time housewife. Steve also grew up believing that's how a wife should be. That's why they both don't like the idea of me working outside. But my mother-in-law's words were too harsh. She not only dismissed my job. Those hurtful words really got to me. I was putting in so much effort at my part-time job, and everyone there was supportive and kind. It was a positive atmosphere, and I felt appreciated and relied upon. It broke my heart to hear myself talked about like I was useless, especially when my mother-in-law didn't even know anything about my job. And finding out that Steve had been saying bad things about me behind my back, despite me taking care of our home, was a shock. I was actually working harder than ever to make sure everything was in order, even with my part-time job. I knew Steve's job was tough, so I was doing my best to help out. But hearing him and his mother gossiping about me on the phone was hard to swallow. I didn't want to believe it. After hearing such awful things, I felt really down for a few days. But then, I remembered my father's face. Since my mother passed away, he'd been living alone in our family home. He lived a bit far from me, and I hadn't visited him recently because I'd been busy. I needed to hear his voice, so I called him. Usually he picks up right away, but that day, it rang for a long time. Just as I started to worry, he finally answered. "Katie, it's been a while. Are you well?" Hearing my father's calm voice, I felt a wave of relief, and tears began to flow. "What happened?" "It took you a long time to pick up the phone." "If you're busy, I can call back later," I said. "No, I'm sorry. I recently fell down the stairs and hurt my back. I can't move around much now, but don't worry about me. I'll be okay soon." "By the way, what's going on? Is everything okay?" he replied. I was really surprised. My dad, who used to be so active, had fallen down the stairs and hurt his back. "No, I'm okay. Just make sure you take care of yourself and get better soon. I'll come to visit you soon, so wait for me," I assured him. "Yeah, I'm okay," he said. But then I thought, he's already considered elderly and injuries might take longer to heal. I had always been reassured by his energy, but suddenly I felt worried. If he keeps using the stairs every day, he might slip again. Plus, the stairs in our old family home are a bit steep, and there are tall steps in the entrance and bathroom. I became really worried about my dad living there and taking care of his back. What if something bad happens and he gets seriously hurt? I couldn't just ignore it. I always thought it would be nice to live closer to him, but now I knew I had to act fast. I decided to build a safer, easier-to-use home for my dad nearby. I had some money from managing apartments that my grandfather left me. Originally, it was meant for my dad, but he put it in my name just in case. He told me to keep it quiet from my husband. I had saved all the rent money until now. I wanted to use that money to build a new house for my dad. I felt really happy thinking about giving him such a great gift, especially since I hadn't been able to do much to help him before. Building the house would cost a lot of money, and I couldn't just keep it a secret. I needed to talk to Steve about it. I was nervous he might not agree and might get upset, but instead he said, "I understand. It makes sense to get him a new house, especially considering his age. If you think you can handle it, go for it. Just don't expect me to help if things get tough." He insulted me again, which made me angry, but arguing would only make things worse. So I decided not to argue back this time. It made things simpler for me. I immediately started looking for a good contractor and began the process of building the new house. But it seemed like Steve wasn't happy with the idea of me actually going through with it. He didn't say anything, so I tried not to pay too much attention to it. But he usually wasn't the type to keep quiet. One day, I was shocked when I went to the bank to take out money for groceries. $3,000 was missing from our living expenses, all taken out at once. I couldn't remember spending such a big amount of money. There was only one person who could have done this. It was hard to believe that Steve would take the money without asking, but it was clear that the money was gone. That night, I confronted him. When I went to the bank today, I saw that $3,000 was taken out from our living expenses. "Do you know anything about this?" I asked. Steve arrogantly replied, "I gave it to my mother. You said you were going to build a house, so you must have been saving up somewhere, right? $3,000 isn't a big deal." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Why did you give her money? Your mother isn't exactly struggling, is she?" And that's our living expenses. It's not fair to give away such a big amount without even talking to me about it, I argued. He snapped back. What do you know about my mother? She said she needed help. What's wrong with a son helping his mother? Plus, that money was earned by me. How I use it is none of your business. If it bothers you, try earning as much as I do with your part-time job. You can't say anything now, can you? Don't ever complain about what I do again. After shouting at me, he stormed out of the room. I always believed Steve wouldn't betray me, even with his harsh words. It would have been better if he had talked to me about it. Maybe there could have been a better way to help his mother without causing this argument. Did he think I'd say no, or did he not trust me? Instead of our marriage making us closer, it felt like we were growing apart. Steve didn't see anything wrong with using the money without asking. The next day, he acted like nothing happened and went to work after breakfast. I didn't say more because I didn't want another fight, but I couldn't shake this uneasy feeling. Meanwhile, the new house was finally done. Despite the business, the construction company was really helpful, and I managed to build a beautiful house. I asked my dad to pack some of his things, but I didn't want him to strain himself, so I hired movers to handle it all for him. With just 2 weeks left until moving day, I was filled with joy thinking about how I could do something special for my dad in the house I had built. On the day we planned to help my dad unpack in the new house, along with Steve, I tried to talk about the arrangements, but then Steve said something shocking. Hey, that house isn't for your dad. It's going to be for my mom. I have the right to decide who lives in the house I helped build, so it's going to be my mom, he said firmly. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. In a panic, I replied, I built that house. It's for my dad. There's no way you, with your part-time job, could have built it. It's my money that paid for it, so don't act so entitled. It seems like he genuinely believed that it was his money that built the house. When we talked about building it before, he seemed fine with the idea. But now it looks like he planned from the start to make it for his mother, not my dad. That's really unfair. Now I have to prove that I used my own money to build it. I had no choice but to tell him about the rental income I'd kept hidden until now. I decided to come clean about it. You're making up stories just because you want the house for yourself. If you're going to lie, at least make it believable, he scoffed. He didn't believe me at all and stormed off somewhere. I was at a loss, but I had to make him understand. While waiting for him to return, he came back looking incredibly angry and then said, You tried to trick me, saying you built that house. You're a liar. That house is mine because I helped build it. You need to leave, even if we break up. I don't think you can survive on your part-time salary. I was speechless at the sudden turn of events. That house was built with my hard work, and being told to leave so abruptly was too much. Sign this and get out tonight, he laughed as he slammed divorce papers on the table and headed to his room. His part was already filled out. After constantly putting me down, presenting the divorce papers like that was the lowest he could go. He must have done this awful thing to make me feel hopeless. Maybe he thought bringing up divorce would make me cave in and let his mother live in the house. But little did he know, I had enough money to live on my own without him. This was the final straw for me. I signed the papers and submitted them, then quickly packed my bags and left for my dad's house. My dad was surprised to see me arriving with so much luggage all of a sudden, but he warmly welcomed me in. After I explained everything that had happened, he patted my back and said, You've been through a lot. You can stay with me in the new house. That would make me happy. Moving day came and everything went smoothly because I was there. We successfully moved in without any issues. I found it a bit strange that my ex-husband hadn't reached out after causing such a scene, claiming the house was his. But I tried not to worry about it because I didn't want to think about someone I was divorced from. A few days after settling into our new home with my father, something unbelievable happened. There was a commotion outside, and when I looked out the window, I saw a big moving truck parked outside, claiming they were moving into our house. I rushed outside to talk to the movers and figure out what was going on. It turned out that the customer was actually my ex-husband, and he was planning to move in with his mother. They wanted to forcefully take over the house where my father and I were already living. Since we were divorced, he was basically a stranger to me now, and it would be a big problem if they just showed up like that. I felt a chilling kind of fear about my ex-husband's aggressive intentions. I explained the situation to the confused movers and asked them to stop their work. Then I talked to my father and quickly called the police. When I told the police what was happening, They confirmed that the house was my property. Since my ex-husband and I were divorced, he had no right to live there, and entering against my will could be considered trespassing. Soon, my ex-husband and his mother arrived. When they saw the police, they started to panic. It finally dawned on him that I was the one who built the house. But with his mother freaking out beside him and the police bombarding him with questions, he lost his cool and yelled, "What's going on? Why can't I live in this house?" Looking at him, I realized I was done dealing with such a person. But to protect my father and myself, I handed over the final piece of evidence to the police. Although the situation calmed down thanks to their intervention, I later heard that my ex-husband faced serious consequences. He was so serious about living in the house that he canceled his apartment lease and even sold his mother's house, leaving him with no place to go. With a breach of contract fee demanded by the movers and a truckload of belongings, he found himself stranded on the street with his mother. The final piece of evidence I gave to the police was footage of the verbal abuse, essentially domestic violence, that my ex-husband subjected me to. Unable to endure his abusive language any longer, I had installed surveillance cameras to record everything. The footage showed me diligently doing housework while he constantly spewed unreasonable abuse. Using this evidence, I managed to further corner him. I hired a lawyer and sued him, eventually extracting a settlement. The expenses from the moving chaos and the settlement depleted the money he got from selling his mother's house and his own savings. Now he and his mother are reportedly living in a rundown apartment. Word of this spread quickly at his workplace. Realizing there was something wrong with his character, his colleagues distanced themselves, and now he is isolated and frowned upon by everyone at the company. As for me, I finally got to adopt a cat. My father's back has completely healed, and we're discussing taking a trip with the cat. I also used the settlement money to open a shop dealing with cat goods. It was challenging at first, and there were failures, but gradually customers increased and the business is thriving. Every day is peaceful and truly enjoyable. I never thought that the action I took for my father's sake would lead to my own happiness. I truly feel that it was the right decision. Recently, there has been a happy development. A man who always comes to my shop and chats pleasantly has been particularly kind to both people and cats. We've made plans to go for a drive together. I'm going to live my life freely and enjoyably. I'm excited about the new happiness that's about to begin. One day, something really unexpected happened to me. It all began when I took my husband to the doctor for a regular checkup. We thought it would be just a normal visit, but it turned out to be a big shock. The doctor, Dr. Lawrence, looked very serious and told us some scary news about my husband's health. His serious face made it clear this was serious. I felt really scared and couldn't believe what I was hearing. The person I loved and took care of was now causing me worry and fear. Dr. Lawrence told me I should think about my own safety and maybe stay away from my husband for a while. His words made me feel really overwhelmed and afraid. My name is Betty Frieden, and I'm 50 years old. I spent the last 10 years working at a big company that makes medicine. That place feels like a second home to me, giving me comfort and making me feel like I belong there. Even though I'm older, I've kept working full-time and earned respect from my coworkers. Not many people my age still work full-time, but I've always been okay with it. Part of the reason I'm so dedicated to my job is because I didn't get married until 4 years ago. My boss, Gerald, and I are close because we're both single. Once he jokingly asked me if I was ever going to get married, but I knew he was just teasing. Around that time, I was seeing Richard secretly. He's older than me, was married before, and like me, doesn't want kids. We met through a service that helps people find companionship later in life. We decided to keep our marriage quiet, not telling anyone about our plans, even though our boss made jokes about us getting married. Eventually, Richard and I got married quietly, without any big ceremony, just signing papers at City Hall. It was simpler than I expected, but I was excited about our future together. But when Dr. Lawrence gave me scary advice, I had to rethink everything. My feelings of care for my sick husband were now mixed with fear and confusion. Dr. Lawrence's words kept echoing in my head, telling me I needed to act to keep myself safe. As I stood there trying to understand what was happening, I realized I had to make a decision quickly. Suddenly, the life I knew and the plans I had were uncertain. I'm LA, and my husband Richard works at a factory. Honestly, I make more money than he does. Richard started working at the factory right after high school. I grew up in an orphanage and always wanted to be independent. That's why I didn't want to quit my job at the pharmaceutical company even after we got married. I love my job too much. When Richard and I got married, I told my boss Gerald right away. He congratulated me, but I could tell he felt a little sad. Maybe he was lonely because I, his friend who was also single, got married first. I tried joking with him about it, but he didn't seem to want to talk about it, so I dropped it. Even though Gerald's reaction was a bit strange, I was really happy to start this new part of my life with Richard. I imagined all the great things we'd do together, but real life wasn't as exciting as my dreams. Being newlyweds was pretty normal. Not much changed for me. I kept working, and the biggest difference was moving to a quieter area and driving to work instead of taking the bus. Richard and I shared my old car because he didn't have one. About a year after we got married, things started to go wrong. Richard began acting differently. He didn't seem himself. He barely touched his breakfast, seemed lost in his thoughts, and even mixed up simple things like condiments. His clothes didn't match, and he became quieter both at work and at home. While I've always admired Richard's quiet strength, his silence started to weigh heavily on me, making me feel like I was all alone. This feeling of loneliness grew as I noticed these small but important changes in him. It hit me that Richard might be going through a mental health problem. Seeing someone you love struggle without knowing how to help them is really tough. So I decided to take Richard to a special clinic that helps with both mental and physical health. There, he was diagnosed with depression. I knew a bit about depression, but hearing the official diagnosis made everything seem a bit darker. The doctor explained that the best way to deal with depression is to figure out what's causing it and tackle that directly. But finding out what exactly was making Richard depressed was hard. He'd been working at the same factory for years without any problems, and nothing big had changed at his job. I even worried that maybe our marriage was somehow making him feel this way. As we talked with the doctor, I reassured him that Richard and I were living a happy life together, and we couldn't pinpoint any specific problems at home that might have caused Richard's depression. The doctor told us to come back if anything changed, or if we figured out what might be causing his depression. But even after visiting the clinic multiple times, we couldn't find out why Richard was feeling so down. And as time went on, his depression only got worse. On his worst days, he could hardly get out of bed, often had headaches, and sometimes had to call in sick to work. He lost his appetite and a noticeable amount of weight. Eventually, he had to quit his job because he couldn't keep up anymore. Richard felt really guilty for relying on me financially, but I assured him that I was okay with working. My main concern was his health. It was really hard to see him suffering so much, and I was always worried about him. Once, when I was at work, Richard went out and got lost on his way back home. That made me worry even more because I wondered if he was not just dealing with depression, but maybe even dementia. That thought added to my stress. When my coworkers asked how things were going, I had to admit that Richard wasn't getting better. It's really tough to watch someone you love struggle so much without being able to help them. One day, Gerald, my boss, noticed that I looked really tired and gave me an energy drink. It made me feel a little better, and I was touched by his kindness. He reminded me that we're all in this together, and his words almost made me cry. With everything going on with Richard, I hadn't realized how much stress I was under. It became clear that I needed to take care of myself too, or else I might fall apart. So I threw myself into my work, trying to keep things as normal as possible in our lives. A year had gone by, but things hadn't gotten any better for Richard. If anything, they'd gotten worse. As our third wedding anniversary approached, I couldn't see any improvement in his condition. Then, one morning, I realized our car was missing. I checked again, but it was definitely gone. Since Richard's diagnosis, I was the only one who drove it, and I hadn't used it since the day before. So it should have been at home. I asked Richard if he knew where the car might be. He said he thought it was there when he got home yesterday. I remember he had gone out for a bit while I was at work. The doctor had suggested he try walking or jogging to help him cope. If the car was there when he came back, it must have disappeared during the night. With the car gone, I had to use public transport and ended up being about 10 minutes late for work. I explained the situation to Gerald, my boss, who was understanding but curious about the car's disappearance. He wondered if Richard might have taken it, but I didn't think so. Given Richard's condition and his reluctance to drive since getting sick, it didn't seem likely. Despite Richard's memory lapses and mood swings, I couldn't imagine him being responsible for the missing car. The car mystery just added another layer of complication to our already tough situation. Right after realizing the car was gone, I reported it to the police, hoping it would turn up soon. But deep down, I worried it might be gone for good. And if that wasn't enough, something else strange happened. On payday, I went to the bank to withdraw some money and found that my personal account was empty. I was shocked. We had a joint account, which I checked next, only to find it was also empty. This left me completely puzzled. Richard and I shared the joint account, but he didn't have access to my personal account, and he didn't know its PIN. Yet somehow, all our savings had disappeared. It hit me hard, and when I got home, I confronted Richard about it. I asked Richard if he knew anything about the money missing from our joint account. He seemed genuinely puzzled and said he didn't know anything about it. Because of his depression, I was hesitant to push him further, worried it might make things worse for him. Richard was staring at the ceiling, looking distant like he often did when he was lost in his thoughts because of his condition. It made me wonder if he could have taken the money, but I wasn't sure. Planning to talk to the police about it, I felt overwhelmed by losing both our car and our savings. The financial strain was tough, especially since I didn't have family to lean on for support. Growing up in an orphanage meant I didn't have parents to help me out in tough times. With Richard's condition not improving, it was suggested that we moved him to a bigger hospital with more resources than the small clinic we'd been going to. The clinic had done what they could, but they thought a general hospital could give him better care. They even gave us a referral letter, so we decided to go to the general hospital for the first time. Taking a taxi there was a bit nerve-wracking for me, and Richard stayed quiet throughout the journey, lost in his own thoughts. As we arrived at the hospital, I took a deep breath, preparing for whatever might come next. I walked into the hospital and handed over the referral letter at the reception, expecting to wait a while since it was a busy place. The lobby was full of patients, each waiting for their turn. After about an hour, Richard was finally called in for his consultation. While he went inside, I took out a book to pass the time. But before Richard had even settled into the doctor's office, a nurse came up to me. "Excuse me, are you Mrs. Simmons?" she asked. I said yes, and she told me the doctor wanted to see me. Since I was used to discussing Richard's condition, I figured it was something similar this time. I followed her to another room, feeling a bit anxious. There, I met a doctor who looked a bit older than me, with gray hair and a kind manner. Before I could even sit down properly, I asked if this was about Richard's condition. He nodded seriously, and I braced myself for whatever news he had for me. The doctor's next words caught me completely off guard. He told me that Richard had been arrested for fraud 10 years ago, and advised me to keep my distance from him. I was utterly confused. Why was this coming up now during a routine medical visit? The doctor explained that he suspected Richard might be faking his depression. He remembered treating a deep cut on Richard's leg during surgery 10 years ago, which raised his doubts. This revelation shocked me. I thought we were dealing with Richard's mental health, but now I was learning about his hidden past and a possible deception about his current condition. It was a lot to process, and I struggled to reconcile the caring husband I knew with the person the doctor described. When the doctor mentioned recognizing a large scar on Richard's right leg, it all started to make sense. I knew of the scar but didn't know how Richard got it, as he had never mentioned it. Finding out that the doctor before me was the one who had treated Richard's injury years ago felt like an unbelievable twist of fate. As the doctor continued, he revealed more about Richard's past. Richard had injured himself during a dispute with his ex-wife, which stemmed from him stealing her money and luxury items. Shockingly, he had even pretended to have dementia to lower his ex-wife's guard before committing the fraud. This pattern of faking illnesses to aid his deceit was truly disturbing. Learning about Richard's criminal history and arrest was overwhelming. I hadn't looked into his background before marrying him. Having been alone for most of my life, I was just grateful to find someone who wanted to be with me. The doctor's serious warning that Richard could be a danger to me sent shivers down my spine. His tone made it clear that this was a serious situation. It hit me hard. I had been deceived. In the days that followed, I struggled to act normal around Richard while secretly planning my next moves. I decided to install surveillance cameras around our home to monitor Richard's actions when I wasn't there. About a week later, I noticed a watch and bag were missing. When I reviewed the camera footage, I saw Richard leaving the house with them and returning later with a lot of cash, looking pleased with himself. His behavior didn't match that of someone suffering from depression. This footage confirmed my worst fears. Richard was the one behind the theft of my belongings, the car, and our savings. Seeing the hard evidence of his deceit was heartbreaking. Richard had lied to me and manipulated me, betraying the trust I had in him. It was clear that I needed to take serious action against someone who had pretended to be vulnerable and in need of care, only to take advantage of my kindness and generosity. The realization that Richard had betrayed my trust was unbearable. I had dedicated my life to working and caring for what I thought was a sick partner. The idea of getting a divorce seemed too small compared to the immense deception I had experienced. It was clear we needed to go our separate ways, but I wanted more than just a legal separation. I wanted Richard to truly grasp the seriousness of his actions and to make amends for the harm he had caused. With a heavy heart and tears threatening to spill, I gathered the divorce papers and filled them out meticulously, including all the necessary details. The following day, pretending everything was normal, I told Richard I needed to step out for a moment. I had already arranged to take a day off from work, explaining the urgency of my situation to my employer, who had agreed to my sudden absence. At the police station, I presented my case to the officers, showing them the footage I had captured of Richard's deceit. At first, they were hesitant to take action based solely on the video. However, after checking with the pawn shop where Richard had sold the stolen items and finding my car being sold as used, the evidence against him started to pile up. They also confirmed that he had accessed my bank accounts illegally, and suspicions arose about his supposed depression. As the truth came out, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. Given Richard's criminal history, the police decided to act quickly and prepared to arrest him. When we returned home with the officers in the early afternoon, Richard looked surprised to see me and even more shocked by the police presence. Despite the divorce papers I held, his focus was on the officers as they informed him of his arrest for fraud. Richard protested, trying to use his depression as a defense, but I wasn't fooled. The doctor from the general hospital had already cast doubt on Richard's claims about his mental health. In that moment, facing the consequences of his actions and the end of our marriage, Richard's mask started to slip. Deciding to take legal action was tough, but it was necessary to protect myself and seek justice for the betrayal I had experienced. During my recent visit to the hospital, a doctor recognized Richard from his past deceitful behavior. He revealed that Richard had once pretended to have dementia to deceive his ex-wife, which made me question his current claims of depression even more. Despite the serious accusations against him, Richard remained unfazed in front of the police, casually denying everything. It was almost as if his history of deceit had prepared him for this moment. He showed no signs of guilt or remorse, instead challenging us to provide proof of his fraudulent actions. His boldness was shocking, especially with the police ready to arrest him based on solid evidence. It was clear that he was accustomed to manipulating situations and underestimating their seriousness. For 4 years, he had deceived me, taking advantage of my trust to steal from me and exploit my kindness. Yet, in a twisted attempt to shift blame, Richard suggested that it was my fault for being too trusting, which felt like another insult. His audacity was astounding. I had supported him, hoping for his recovery, only to be betrayed and treated with disdain. In that moment, I lost my patience. I declared my intention to seek legal advice and pursue alimony, urging Richard to face the consequences of his actions. My outburst at the police station surprised everyone, including the officers, but it finally seemed to shake Richard's composure. As the police handcuffed him, his defiance crumbled. He looked defeated, his arrogance replaced with frustration as he was led away. Watching the scene unfold, I felt detached, as if I were watching someone else's life unravel. Ever since the doctor's warning, nothing had seemed real anymore. Yet, here I was, confronted with the harsh reality of my situation, determined to move forward from the chaos Richard had caused. Watching Richard being taken away by the police felt surreal, almost like a scene from a dream. This moment marked a turning point, allowing me to imagine a return to the life I had before the chaos of marriage consumed it. As a sense of relief washed over me, knowing I wouldn't spend my future under Richard's manipulative control, I also felt a wave of loneliness. Waiting more than 47 years to marry, The idea of being alone once again overshadowed my newfound freedom. 2 months later, our divorce was finalized. Richard's arrest had caused a slight delay in the process, but by the time everything was official, my emotions had settled. I was able to reflect on our shared history with a clear mind. Richard's future was uncertain, facing imprisonment for his second offense. I could only hope that this experience would lead him to sincerely reconsider his choices. In the aftermath of our dissolved marriage, which had become nothing more than a disillusioning memory, I found myself contemplating my next steps over a simple lunch at work. It was then that my boss, Gerald, approached me with his store-bought hot dog lunch and made a seemingly casual yet loaded comment. "I think you'd be just fine if you were with me," he said almost offhandedly. His words caught me off guard, and it took a moment for their full weight to sink in, leaving me momentarily flustered. "Yes, I'm serious," he added, noticing my hesitation. His tone was smooth yet sincere. I was speechless, momentarily forgetting about my lunch as I processed his proposition. Gerald then went back to work, leaving me to contemplate his unexpected offer. In the days that followed, the idea of a romantic relationship with Gerald had never crossed my mind. Yet, I couldn't ignore the care and stability he had always shown me. His steady presence and responsible nature suddenly made me see him in a new light. Despite my initial reaction, as I continued to eat and ponder, the seeds of possibility that Gerald had planted began to take root in my mind, suggesting a future I hadn't dared to imagine until now. The idea of inviting Gerald out for a meal after work sparked a warmth within me. It kindled a sense of hope for the future. Perhaps this was the perfect moment to embark on a new journey, to explore the possibility of happiness and companionship once again. The thought of stepping out of my comfort zone and into a new beginning with someone who had shown me kindness and support felt both thrilling and comforting. Tonight, I decided, could be the start of something new and beautiful. Finally, I don't have to see you anymore. You've been living here without paying, but now it's time for you to go. We've put up with your freeloading for too long. Okay, I get it. I'll go. Thanks for everything. I packed my things fast and left the house where I'd been living with my in-laws. I saw my mother-in-law smiling happily as I left. I chuckled to myself, putting on a sad face, but I knew what was coming for this house next. Hi, I'm Emily, 32 years old, and I work from home. I've been married to John for 5 years. We were happy together, but things changed in our 4th year of marriage. Suddenly, my father-in-law got sick, and we had to move in with my in-laws to take care of him. We thought it would only be temporary, but John's the only child, so we ended up staying longer to help out. I even thought about quitting my job to take care of him, but luckily, I could keep working from home. Living with my in-laws was chaotic at first, but then came some issues, especially with my mother-in-law. Emily, when are you going to start doing some housework? Get cleaning and cook dinner already. I'm not just lazing around, mother-in-law. What are you talking about? You're always on that computer, surfing the web. You must be goofing off instead of doing work. The idea that using a computer means wasting time is old-fashioned. I got special permission to work from home. I didn't want to waste the skills I've worked hard to get, so I balanced my job with taking care of the house and my father-in-law. It felt good when, after about 3 months of hard work, I managed to earn as much as before. I had to work extra hard because it was tough to manage on just John's income. I'm glad we'll finally have some extra money. I want to save up, I thought. But things got harder for some reason. It seemed like our savings were just going down. When I checked our spending, I realized John was spending a lot, and I found out my mother-in-law was spending a lot too. John has always liked to show off, often treating his coworkers to lunch. But lately, he's been using our credit card to throw big parties for them. Obviously, if you spend more than you earn, your savings will go down. As for my mother-in-law, she's picked up a bunch of expensive hobbies with her friends, spending money on classes and socializing without thinking twice. With both John and my mother-in-law piling chores and caregiving on me while spending recklessly, I reached my limit. I was covering all our expenses with my income and couldn't even think about saving money. It stressed me out, so I decided to talk to them. John, Mom, you've been spending a lot lately. We're going to run out of savings if we keep this up. Can you please cut back on spending? But they both pushed back strongly. You think I want my coworkers to see me as cheap? I have to treat them sometimes. It's okay to not always be the one treating, and they won't think you're cheap if you're not always throwing parties. I have to be considerate at work too, you know. It's one thing to treat your coworkers to lunch, but taking them to a bar on your tab? How does that have anything to do with work? You're just doing it for fun, right? And don't pretend you don't know. You come home drunk and brag about it. You're having way more fun than talking to your own mom. You see what I mean, right? Haha. I go to my classes too, to have fun with my friends. Are you saying I should just stay home? You're not being a good wife. You, who only know how to do housework, have no right to tell me what to do. Why is she acting so superior when all she does is stay at home? I work too, you know. I earn money and help with the household. I'm also taking care of your dad, not just doing chores. Stop lying. My mom takes care of dad, and since you're not even going to the office, you're not making much, are you? Who do you think you are, acting all superior just because you work part-time? I was stunned, speechless. It seemed like they didn't understand that I was really working, taking care of the house and my father-in-law, all while earning money. And my mother-in-law seemed to have told John that she was the one looking after my father-in-law, making me seem lazy. I thought about leaving many times, but I stayed for my father-in-law. He's always been kind to me since I married John, always saying, "Emily, I'm sorry you have to put up with so much." Father-in-law, I don't mind taking care of you. What are you talking about? I feel bad needing care, but I feel worse about how your son and wife are treating you. They're taking advantage of you, aren't they? Well, yes, we couldn't make ends meet with just John's income. It's all thanks to your hard work that we're getting by. Father-in-law, you knew. It turned out my father-in-law had known about our household situation all along. Whenever he needed care, he'd thank me and speak kindly to me. I loved him dearly, so taking care of him wasn't a burden at all. But I worried about what would happen to him if I left. So I decided to look after him diligently until he passed away, which happened about a year later. At his funeral, I cried the whole time, grieving deeply for him. But my mother-in-law, without shedding a tear, coldly asked me why I was crying so much. It was clear she wasn't grieving like I was. So I replied, "My father-in-law has passed away. Of course I'm sad. I've been taking care of him all this time." Upon hearing my reply, my mother-in-law exploded with anger, as if I didn't take care of my husband at all. But the truth was, she hardly took care of him. Instead, she took advantage of me, avoiding both housework and caregiving by claiming she was too busy with her hobbies. Yet she always managed to find time to go out. She played the victim, pretending to cry in front of relatives. From the outside, it looked like I was the bad daughter-in-law. People would say, "Stop being so hard on your mother-in-law." Some even took her side and blamed me. I was just grieving my father-in-law's death, but even strangers blamed me, which made me furious. I chose to distance myself from our relatives. Then John noticed me and approached to complain. "So you embarrassed my mom in front of our relatives, huh?" "What? I don't understand. I was just crying and grieving your dad's death. Then your mom came out to me, making snide comments. That's all." "I heard you were talking like she did nothing for my dad." "I didn't say that. I was just saying how sad I was that your dad, who I had been taking care of, passed away. Maybe it sounded like I was blaming your mom because she didn't do anything. But in reality, are you looking down on my mom?" "No, I'm just telling the truth. And if you're so upset, you should have helped me out. Don't you think you could have taken better care of your own dad?" "Why are you blaming me too? I'm not involved in this. You're his son. Didn't you feel any responsibility to take care of him?" "I had work. It was your job as a housewife to take care of him." "That's not fair. I have work too, so that doesn't make sense." Our argument got heated, and panicked relatives intervened to break it up. Though the argument stopped, my husband and I didn't speak for the rest of the day. Later, after handling all the funeral arrangements, a lawyer talked about the inheritance. "I'd like to discuss the will regarding the inheritance after your father-in-law's passing. It states that the family home and land will be given to his son John, while the remaining assets will be split equally between his wife and daughter-in-law, Emily." "What? Why would Emily get a share? I'm his wife. Shouldn't everything else be mine if John gets the house and land?" "Your husband wanted to acknowledge Emily's dedication to his care. He wished to leave her a portion of the inheritance as a gesture of gratitude. This was his decision, and it cannot be changed." "Ah, I understand now. So Emily was just looking after him for the inheritance. Why would you think that? It must be. Why else would she dedicate herself to caregiving? I've had a good relationship with my father-in-law ever since we got married. I took care of him to repay his kindness. If you think it's impossible, why did you push the caregiving onto me? Mother-in-law, why would you belittle me like that? Don't talk nonsense. I understand now, so let's just leave it at that. When the lawyer was there, my mother-in-law couldn't say anything rude, so she kept talking, looking annoyed. He made that decision. Well, I suppose it's a way of saying thank you for taking care of him. There's no other explanation. Then the lawyer kept talking. Can I go on? Your father-in-law wrote a note saying Emily doesn't have to look after him anymore. When the lawyer said that, my mother-in-law's face, which had been angry before, suddenly changed to a happy smile. I got it. I get what it means now. Oh, what do you mean? My husband looked confused by his mom's sudden excitement. It means Emily doesn't have to stay here anymore. Since she won't have to take care of my husband, the money split wasn't a thank you, it was just like a goodbye payment. My mother-in-law twisted my father-in-law's will based on her own ideas. She misunderstood it the way my father-in-law, and I wanted her to misunderstand it. Actually, before my father-in-law passed away, we talked about this. He wanted me to be free from this house after he died. He planned to trick my husband and mother-in-law with the will, so I could leave without any fuss. Just as my father-in-law planned, my mother-in-law, totally fooled, is trying to get rid of me. While hiding my true feelings, I acted shocked by the will, saying, "Oh, father, why would you do such a thing? See, even my husband doesn't see you as his precious daughter-in-law. John, you don't need Emily anymore, right? Just divorce her already." John, you wouldn't suggest divorce, would you? I looked at John with tears in my eyes. After a long pause, he finally said, "Yeah, it seems like the best choice. I've got the family property and Mom got the money. I won't have to worry about taking care of anyone in the future, and I won't have any issues with Emily." What? I understand. That's how it is. I'm sorry, but could you please leave? Okay, I guess I don't belong here anymore. Feeling just as hurt, I took a paper from my drawer and handed it to my husband. It was something I had picked up during a past argument, the divorce papers. Without hesitation, he signed them. Finally, I don't have to deal with you, a freeloader who doesn't contribute. Leave. Consider yourself lucky I tolerated you for this long. I understand. I'll go now. Thank you for everything up until now. By the way, since the lawyer's here, I'd like to talk about. It's fine if there's no need for property division, right? I've already received enough from my father-in-law's inheritance, and you know what, Emily? I've managed to support myself just fine. It would be greedy of me to ask for more. Well, you have a point. Okay, that settles it. Please leave this house as soon as you can. I hurriedly packed my things and left the home where I had lived. My mother-in-law watched me go with a gleeful expression, unaware of what was to come in that house. After leaving my in-laws' house, I wasted no time in submitting the divorce papers to City Hall. When I arrived at the apartment I had rented ahead of time, I couldn't contain my excitement as I shouted in the spacious room. Yes, I'm finally free at last. I couldn't help but let out a yell of joy. I was so relieved to be liberated from the painful married life. I owe a huge debt of gratitude to my father-in-law, who orchestrated my escape from that house. Since then, I've been enjoying a comfortable life on my own. While I had gotten used to working remotely at my in-laws' place, now that I've left, I have much more time to focus on my work. As a result, my income has increased, and I'm able to live a luxurious life without any disturbances. One day, I received a call from my ex-husband. "John, it's been a while. What made you call?" "Emily, please, we're struggling. Can you help us out?" "Is this a joke? Weren't you the ones who kicked me out? Even though we're earning the same, we're barely making ends meet. We can't keep living like this." "Oh, that sounds rough." I decided to lay it out straight. "Well, that's because my salary isn't supporting the household anymore." "What do you mean? Can't you see? You couldn't sustain your lifestyle just with your income, even though you were spending lavishly, and I couldn't afford our lifestyle on my own." "Nonsense. You've always been wasting your salary on yourself. The only reason we managed was because of the money I was bringing in. At your ages, your spending habits, both you and your mother, are just ridiculous." "What? So how much were you making, Emily?" "Let me think. It was around $4,800 a month back then, I think. You were making that much. Yes, I was. But you never knew, did you? By the way, now that I'm not held back, I'm making even more. Ha ha. Even over the phone, I could sense my ex-husband's surprise. Emily, what do you say we give living together another shot? Huh? Kicking you out was a mistake. We can start over, can't we? What are you saying? You're just interested in my money. No, it's not about that. I've realized I still love you, Emily. Don't be ridiculous. I have no interest in going back to you. By the way, what about the inheritance your mother got? You should still have plenty left from that, right? Well, it's almost gone. There's no way she got around $100,000, right? You couldn't have spent it all so quickly. We went shopping and took trips overseas. Plus, we lost almost half of it in casinos. Both of you are beyond help. I'm speechless. I'm a stranger now. I can't do anything about it, and I don't want to. But don't say such cold things. Help us. I don't care. I'm hanging up. Don't call me again. After ending the call, I promptly canceled my ex-husband's phone contract. I had no clue what happened to him and my ex-mother-in-law after losing all communication means. However, nearly a year later, as I passed by their house, I noticed it had been demolished. They must have had to let go of it due to financial troubles. But honestly, it wasn't my concern anymore. As for me, I decided to fill my newfound free time with a new hobby and started attending a wine class I'd been interested in. There, I met a man 2 years older than me who showed a keen interest in me. After a year and a half of dating, we tied the knot. He's a down-to-earth and kind-hearted man, making waves at a prestigious company and earning a good salary. He respects my work, and we share a happy married life built on mutual respect. Lately, I've been pondering if this newfound happiness was a gift from my father-in-law,